It's more like we overcoming. Painting a picture so lovely. I'm using all of the colors. Get hide away from the darkness. Digging up what's undercover. Do you know what's in your closet? All of these struggles, I swear I dispel it. All of this strife, I swear I repel it. All of this poverty, I swear I inherit it. All of this violence, yeah, we repair this. Are we prepared for the rise of an empire? And are we prepared for the fall of a system? Everything we know was a lie. Patch myself up from the root to the crown, in the efforts to preserve my bloodline. I would do anything for my soul tribe. Burn this shit down on the scribe, inscribing all of the light that I've been manifesting. Now I'm tired of waiting. All this time we wasted, all these sacrifices. Put it down in writing. More than qualified to achieve all I desire. My words the candle, light up the fire. I'm on my way.
For the team, took a bullet for the dream that we would one day all be free, free from prejudice, free from sexism, free from bigotry. I die for creativity, I die for freedom to be free. I died and left a legacy. Oh, but baby, I still live through technology. After the sun, then comes the rain. And after the storm, the sun will start shining.
What's going on? What's going on? What's going on? What's going on, y'all? What is up? What is up? Hope everyone is having a wonderful Sunday evening. I had to take a break, no shade. This past week, some very good things popped up and I utilized those opportunities. I took advantage of those opportunities to kind of just chill. The world is scratching the tip of the iceberg when it comes to shit hitting the fan, okay? And again, as you can see on the screen, it reads World War III is coming, but yet you see another group of people saying we are so back, baby. And we're going to get into the history of some very dark stuff, especially concerning the church. Because in a lot of these spaces, we have these Bible studies and all these things and saying that we are morally in tuned to be able to rightly divide the word of God. But in this live, we're going to see how many people really know the word of God. And not only the word of God, but the creation and the manipulation of the word of God to be used not in a way that is fruitful and life-giving in reference to the mind, body, spirit, and soul, but to use as a form of control through fear tactics. Okay? So for the black Christian individuals who are not afraid, who realize that God has not given them the spirit of fear, but has given them power and love and of a sound mind, I ask you to embrace the fear so you can see fear for what it really is. F-E-A-R, false evidence appearing real. And the thing is, if you're willing to go down this road to see what's really going on, how are you going to handle it? And it's better to face the truth, the objective truth now, than to have it hit you in the face when shit hits the fan. But before we get into that, before we do that, copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act of 1976, allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, education, and research. Fair use is a use permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. Nonprofit, educational, or personal use tips the balance in favor of fair use. All of the videos, songs, images, and graphics used in this live belong to their respective owners, and BubzDaGawd does not claim any right over them. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to start with the inception of this fear. Okay? We're going to go back in time during the dark ages of the church and the many inquisitions that happened, meaning that many innocent men, women, and children were murdered in the name of Jesus, in the name of God. And don't get mad at us because this is y'all history. We just educated about it. So let's get into the history of fear, shall we? And again, copyright disclaimer. Okay, fair use enacted. And again, all the content in this live is in the links below. So yeah, let's get into it.
In medieval Europe, the Catholic Church held a level of power and influence over the population that is almost inconceivable today. This power came from a combination of factors, including persuasion, corruption, and coercion. Most of all, straight-up fear-mongering. Yes, the medieval church was heavily invested in the business of scaring the faithful into staying faithful. Today, we're going to take a look at how the medieval Catholic Church frightened its parishioners into obedience.
Now, you might be saying, well, I'm not Catholic. I'm not Catholic. They are the ones that were the earlier branches of Christianity. Okay? They were the ones who created this. Okay? And for the black people, I hope y'all listening. For the black Christians, I really want y'all in the building. The nigga Christians, I want you in here. Because we're also going to delve a little bit deeper about how organized religion was used on our people. But again, let's continue further with the inception of this bullshit.
You hear the term Hellmouth, they're most likely to think of the television series Buffy the Vampire Slayer, if they think of anything at all. Indeed, modern visitors to medieval churches and cathedrals would probably regard the frightening sculpted images appearing over the entryway as mere art or ornamentation. But for the populace of the medieval era, who were superstitious and uneducated, the image of the Hellmouth was nothing short of terrifying. The Hellmouth was typically depicted as a ferocious beast devouring sinners during the Last Judgment. It was the first thing that parishioners would see on their way into the sanctuary, and the message was crystal clear: obey the church, or this will happen to you.
Or as we've heard on a particular platform when they were looking at Brandon Tatum, Officer Tatum's video, where that one pastor literally said that at this point, it's either y'all with us, which are the ones on God's side, or you are with the heathens. You are with the lost. You are with the exiled. So just think about that. Again, in 2024, pastors are saying this from their pulpits. Either you're with them or you're with us. But at the beginning of the situation with the medieval church, again, parishioners and people who believed in the church, that was the first thing they saw. Not Christ with his arms open wide, saying, I died for all of you. Not anything loving or inclusive to make you want to see what's going on. But that if you stand against us, the church, this is what will happen to you.
Wow, they were very, very subtle.
Save your family from purgatory by giving a child to the church. And no shade, if you want this whole queer liberation, we don't want this around our children, let the children be children, and then when they get older, let them figure that out. Okay, I don't mind doing that, as long as y'all do the same thing in reference to organized religion as well. Don't indoctrinate your child into Christianity. Allow your child to be like Chuck E. Cheese, where a kid can be a kid, and once that child gets to a certain age, then they can make the decision on whether they want to participate in organized religion or not. So I want to bring that up. Very interesting.
Purgatory in the Catholic religion is an intermediate state that comes after death, where people can expiate their sins before moving on to heaven. In medieval times, churchgoers were extremely concerned about how much time they might have to spend there. Luckily, there were several ways a person could ensure their wait wouldn't be overly long. For example, they could donate money and goods to the church, attend services regularly, or even purchase a certificate that could get them an early release. But for those who absolutely, positively had to be sure they would skip purgatory entirely, there was only one surefire way: donate one of their children to the church.
So, one way to completely escape purgatory. And again, for the black Christians, because again, according to y'all, I'm the mentally ill homosexual who has no moral right or obligation to interpret the Bible. So this is your job to come in here and educate me, and it's on Sunday. So why don't y'all do that, if that is the case? But then y'all gotta also acknowledge this as well. So now, in order to escape purgatory or to expedite your escape from purgatory, you can just go ahead and bypass all that shit and give a child to the church. Even though inside the damn book, when the rich man asked Christ how to inherit the kingdom of heaven, Christ told this individual to give up everything that you have and follow me. And that it will be easier for a camel to go through the needle of an eye than for someone to buy their way into heaven. Meanwhile, the Catholic Church, again, one of the roots of organized religion in America and abroad, unfortunately, just give us your children.
In ancient times, religions may have demanded human sacrifice to appease their gods. But the medieval church had a more pragmatic use for these children, namely replenishing their own numbers. The clergy, of course, is supposed to be celibate, so new priests, nuns, and monks had to be recruited from the general population. While these new recruits didn't have to be children, the church preferred them because they were easier to mold.
Oh, easier to mold, because the children were easier to mold. Interesting. So the same thing that y'all be saying that the drag queens and the fags is doing, y'all doing. And to be honest, factually, y'all been doing longer. And y'all feel some type of way because y'all influence is falling to the wayside because we see y'all don't have no real power, but then we realize that the real power is in the violence.
Didn't the families miss their children? Certainly. But in an era where poverty was common and many already had too many mouths to feed, there was no real choice.
Wow.
What's more, the arrangement could actually wind up being beneficial to everyone involved. For the child, being raised by the church would mean eating better, staying cleaner, and receiving an education. For the parents, the arrangement meant saving money and resources that could be spent on the rest of the family. However, while being raised by the church meant having a full belly, a warm place to sleep, and an education, there was also, predictably, a much darker side to the practice. Many children are known to have been victimized by church leaders in a number of inappropriate ways.
Wow. So not only was this shit happening back in those days, it's happening today. Y'all too busy about the quote unquote the world and what the world is doing. Y'all not even checking your own backyards. Y'all not even checking your own pulpits. Y'all not even checking your own clergymen. You're not even checking your own people in your church who serve. And then when they get caught up being a human being and falling short, you can automatically give all this grace and mercy to these individuals on these pulpits who preach anything and everything except grace and mercy.
Accounts of those who found themselves trapped in a miserable, abusive existence within the church have survived to this very day.
Crying and bleeding statues sent dire warnings.
To most modern observers, seeing a statue weep would be greeted by immediate skepticism. One might suppose the statue had been cracked and taken on water from some outside source, or perhaps deception was involved and some devious person placed a water hose inside the statue to create an illusion. Seeing a statue weep blood might make one suspect something rusty was leaking onto it. Yet even today we hear reports of people witnessing statues they believe are crying real tears or bleeding real blood. Often they believe these tears are sent by Christ or some other heavenly figure. So you can imagine how easily the overwhelmingly superstitious and religious population of medieval days would have easily accepted such a sight. Indeed, weeping and bleeding statues were commonly considered powerful omens of evil or sad events to come, an interpretation that was quite useful for a church seeking to encourage continued obedience.
The faithful could buy their way out of hell or purgatory. And I'm
While you probably think there's no way to buy oneself out of having committed terrible sins, you'd be dead wrong. In the medieval era, as much as today, the church was quite fond of money, and the faithful could actually buy forgiveness with cash. If enough money was involved, nothing was unforgivable. Even more convenient was that you could purchase a pardon in advance for something you hadn't even done yet. Plan to rob or kill someone? No problem. Just buy yourself an advance pardon and have a good time. It was a great arrangement for those who could afford it, and it made the church a fortune. Call it your get-out-of-jail card for the afterlife. One of the church's other biggest moneymakers was selling tickets out of purgatory, and you could purchase one not just for yourself, but also for your deceased loved ones. Worried that your parents or grandparents have been denied entrance to heaven and are trapped in purgatory?
Not the error messages.
No problem. Purchase the pardon card. For the right price, the church would literally issue you an actual physical certificate that proved your loved one was on the way to heaven.
Wow.
The pardon card. Don't leave life without it.
Okay, trump card. Shame. Adulterers feared exposure and public punishment.
Some things never change. For example, adulterers in medieval times feared pretty much the same exact things modern ones do, namely getting caught. These days, a revelation like that would probably lead to couples therapy or possibly a divorce. But in the medieval era, that kind of exposure would mean being made an object of public shaming and ridicule. In fact, the term walk of shame originated in that era and was meant quite literally. Accused adulterers might be required to walk nude through the streets under the ridicule of friends and neighbors. Game of Thrones fans are probably thinking of Queen Cersei's famous Walk of Shame right about now, which was based directly on this real-life practice. Not surprisingly, despite this heavy punishment, adultery remained popular. For some, the shame is part of the game.
Images of the Last Judgment loomed at the sanctuary walls.
The aforementioned hellmouth sculptures that hung over the church doors were an effective mood setter.
Of
But
course.
they were only the beginning. Once inside the church, the parishioner would be greeted by images of the end of the world, the Last Judgment, and so-called doom paintings, which depicted the faithful rejoicing with God in heaven, while the sinners boiled in a lake of fire. That's not all, though. Churches were often filled with altarpieces, statues of tortured saints, and all manner of other images of sinners being punished in hell. The church employed the greatest artists of the day to create these works, and those
Right.
artists often had vivid and terrifying imaginations.
Give until it hurts, or go straight to hell.
For the medieval church, the need to keep a grip on their power and influence was rivaled only by the drive to make money. Church officials at all levels were primarily concerned with selling get-out-of-purgatory certificates. They also enjoyed spreading the word about how working for the church would ensure your social position on earth and reserve you a spot in heaven. This fixation on profit went so far, parishioners were often warned that any and all expendable income they came into possession of should be given directly to the church.
To the church.
Depending on a person's social status, contributions could come in various forms.
Right.
If you were poor, you could give livestock or whatever coins you were able to spare.
Right.
Upper and middle class families, and yes, there was a burgeoning middle class at this point, were also under a great deal of pressure to give. Examples of what such people might donate to stay in the church's good graces include silver candlesticks, linen altar cloths, or even a church pew.
Let's bring it into modern times. The Lord done told me that there's 10 of y'all in here that is to sow a seed of $10,000. And if you don't sow this seed, the Lord told me to tell you that your family will be cursed. Again, how much have people given to the church, especially in the black church, to where they give their last dollar and they go home to hungry children? They have no electricity, they have no running water, they have nothing there to help sustain them, but I'm giving my last because I was told to. Again, meanwhile, these great cathedrals are being built, big ass churches every fucking where, but yet death and destruction still shrouds the area, still emanates immensely in that area. On the 2, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 breaking news. Y'all gotta make this make sense. But see, it only makes sense if I can find a way to get out of it. And instead of operating in the flow of love like Christ in that narrative asked for people to do, y'all want to do this cheat code game shark ass way of trying to once again bypass Christ, bypass love to get to God, to get to power. And then when y'all get that power without any strong foundation, look at what the fuck happens.
The extremely wealthy might even donate something as expensive as an ornate altarpiece or stained glass window, which might depict holy figures along with members of the donor's family.
The church used Dante's Inferno to terrorize their flock.
Ever hear someone refer to the 7th level of hell? You probably have, though you may not have realized that phrases like that are an allusion to the first part of Dante Alighieri's Divine Comedy, namely the Inferno. This 3-part epic poem, written in the 14th century, chillingly details the experience of going through hell, purgatory, and heaven. Considered one of the greatest works of Western literature, the Divine Comedy heavily inspired the artist who created the Hellmouths, as well as all the imagery within the church depicting sinners in hellish circumstances. Ironically, the poem was really just an excuse for its author to blow off steam at his enemies, but it was also something a lot of people could relate to, including the church. In fact, for the church, Dante's Inferno was an invaluable resource for frightening the faithful into strict obedience. Though, of course, much like the rest of their agenda, this had much more to do with keeping people in the habit of giving their money, property, and children over to the church than it did with saving anyone's soul.
Wow. The menacing gazes of sculpted gargoyles watched parishioners. So again, these people talk about demons and all this other stuff, and if you don't believe in what we believe in, there are demons that are going to be there to devour your soul. Meanwhile, they got the damn gargoyles and demons on the building, going into the church as if though this is the only place where we cannot attack you. We'll watch you from afar, seething, angry, upset, because you have now stepped into a holy space that which we cannot dwell in. Again, I keep telling y'all, this is fear tactics, fear mongering, and this is the beginning of it.
Medieval cathedrals were often enormous, elaborate buildings, and the fact that many still stand today is a testament to human mastery of architecture, physics, and masonry. These buildings often took several generations to fully construct, and villages and cities would rise up around them. Building a cathedral was difficult and dangerous, but also allowed for an unparalleled level of artistic creativity. For example, the original builders would often carve their own faces into the statuary and motifs on display both inside and outside the buildings. Despite this freedom, the sculptors and masons had to work within the artistic styles favored by the church. This included imagery of Jesus, Mary, and the saints, but also would typically include figures of demons and gargoyles on the building's exterior. These figures would often be depicted near doorways or high up on spires. This way, they could cast their unnerving gazes down upon the sinners entering the church, inspiring them to seek forgiveness and stay obedient.
Pay a fine or go to hell.
Despite all the fear-mongering the church engaged in to keep their parishioners in line, there are always those who just don't care. Whether because they didn't believe in it or simply felt an eternity of punishment was a fair price for the sins they sought to engage in, the medieval era had plenty of folks who frequently skipped church services. Some preferred to spend their time drinking, gambling, visiting prostitutes, and some just like sleeping late. Whatever the case, sins like these were punishable offenses. However, as you may have guessed, these sins were absolutely forgivable if the right financial price was paid to the church. And since a failure or refusal to pay the fine constituted a one-way ticket to hell, most people paid up. So what do you think?
Wow. So again, we are giving some examples of how the church, and I'm willing to say even to this day, who still employ those tactics, because we see that on the rise now. We see the rise of Christian nationalism. We see the rise of ex-queer testimonies, if you will. We're seeing this uprising of people who are saying, well, we gotta stop being scared and we gotta stand up as Christians and take our rightful place. And again, when we look at actual history, we see what the hell that means, because on the screen it reads World War III is coming, and we are so back, baby, because now y'all get to have the opportunity to operate in the one power thing of God that y'all know very well above everything else. Again, the one thing that Christ minored in, y'all majored in, which is violence. But since the black people are in the building, again, for the black Christians, you have the right to educate. This is Sunday. Educate. Don't just sit back and watch. Educate. Now we're going to talk about how Christianity used the Bible on blackness. But before we get into that, let me look at y'all comments real quick. Okay, and yes, I have some songs from Tales from the Hood playing in the background. That's the background music for this shit, because this is where the hell we finna go, so we might as well go ahead and go. Queen Stevie says, and now we're seeing why a lot of LGBT people are leaving the churches. Okay, Deshaun also says, do you want to know why see out in the world what they see? That's how they make their money. But when you have the flock in the church, they victimize them and sweep it under the rug. Yes, they become your torturer and your remedy. They tell you, and as we're going to get into further, because we're going to have a black man who is very highly educated and respected in his field and what he does, that breaks the Bible down in a way that a lot of black Christian people will literally start having panic attacks. And those are the conversations I'm really ready to have, because I have these surface level conversations because I have a bigger awareness of what's going on. And I'd be trying to have these smaller conversations to try to dilute the fear so we can focus on the bigger stuff, because we all being lied to. And instead of the church owning that and building reconciliation, they are ready to fight to the death to prove that you're wrong and they're not, even though factually, objectively speaking, through this organized religious mindset, they've been lied to. Okay? Queen Stevie also says almost 2/3 of queer people who were raised in the church have left, and as they should. I would love to see how the church, especially the black church, would thrive without fag members and fag servers. Y'all would actually have to work a little bit harder. Deshaun says, and the saddest part is the leaders that is in that church don't get punished for it. They don't go to jail for it. They don't get jumped for it. They don't get shot for it. But when it comes to gay people, their punishment goes to them. Weird, isn't it? Well, I'm just reading how you wrote it, but I'm sure you meant to say people, all that punishment goes to them. And that is unfortunately the truth. If your pastor fuck up, you can't really throw him out, because he is the one who is your leader. He is the one that you have low-key, unconsciously deified and made into a god. For that is the only one that is connected to that source, and you're not. So that when they do fall by the wayside, because they also are dealing with great immense of power and responsibility, and they wield it in a very low vibrational ass way. Jamal Bryant, Prophet Brian Karn, all these other black individuals, Juanita Bynum, all these people who utilize their power in the wrong way, then they get pardoned because they are the ones connected. And if your pastor, preacher, reverend is not teaching you or inspiring you to have your own connection, your own divine relationship with source, with the creator of all things, if they're not teaching you that, you need to go somewhere else and find you a church that will teach you to do that. Stevie also says the study found that of the 87% of black queer people who were raised Christian, over half of them, 54%, stayed Christian. The research used a nationally representative sample of 1,529 queer people recruited by Gallup, who were polled in 2016, 17, and 18. Deshaun says, wow, the adulterers was popular. See what I mean? They pick and choose what's in the Bible, what's okay, and what's not. Queen Stevie also says, PRRI found that the number of those who describe themselves as nothing in particular has held steady since 2013, but those who identify as atheists have doubled from 2% to 4%. And those who say they're agnostic has more than doubled from 2 to 5%. People are becoming aware, especially with Project 2025, which I feel is a Nazi right-wing Christian fascism agenda. Okay. Deshaun says, oh yeah, I was watching Setting the Record Straight, and Michi X says, if you vote Democrat, you're voting for queer predators to prey on your kids. Here we go again with this. If that was the case, he should start in the damn church, because that's where a lot of the predators are at. Hello? And I might have to check that out. Send me that video in the DMs, Deshaun, if you haven't already. Okay? Now, what we're going to do now, what's up, Queen Spicy? Now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and delve into the Slave Bible. Okay? It's like this quote that I read a long time ago and heard a long time ago, where it said, before the colonizers came, they had the Bible, we had the land, right? When they came upon our shores, they taught us how to pray, which when you pray, they say to bow your head and close your eyes. After we finished praying and we awoke and we opened our eyes, we had the Bible while they had the land. So again, for my black Christian people, okay? The black Bible scholars who know more than the fags ever would, I also need you to come educate, not just give talking points to prove yourself in the eyes of other Christians and hopefully to God, but continue that. So my thing is, why you're not in the comment section commenting anything? Meanwhile, the fag be over in other spaces commenting. Again, we see who really about it and we see who really are just the talkers. So let's get into the Slave Bible and how that happened. Again, fair use is enacted.
In 2018, at the Museum of the Bible in Washington, D.C., was a special exhibit centered on a rare Bible from the 1880s that was used by British missionaries to convert and educate slaves. What's notable about this Bible is not just its rarity, but its content, or rather the lack of content.
Right.
It excludes any portion of text that might inspire rebellion or liberation. This was the Slave Bible, the Holy Scriptures, the Word of God as at the time, meant to guide us through our lives on earth. The Slave Bible was different from the Bible we know today.
Correct.
It was used as a tool for propaganda, supported by ministers who claimed to speak for God. It might surprise you to learn that some who preached love and holiness believed that God had cursed a certain race because of the color of their skin.
Or curse a certain group of people because they fags. Or curse a certain group of people because they're women. Interesting.
But what exactly did the Slave Bible contain? Which passages were promoted and which ones were left out?
What happened?
And the most significant question of all,
what is it?
Why did it even exist?
Why?
In this video, we will answer all your questions and shine a light on a time when religion was used to spread falsehoods and hatred. Before we get right in...
Okay, and before we get into that, we're going to skip this because, again, they link is in the description box below. You can do all this shit. Anyway, let's get into it.
Prior to their abduction and enslavement, Africans were not monolithic in their religious beliefs.
Correct.
Rather, they practiced a rich tapestry of spiritual traditions that...
I think they were polytheistic. I think that's what it's called. You believe in multiple gods. Again, Africa, very diverse and rich within its own fucking culture that some of you niggas don't even really know in real life. Y'all be getting these damn dashikis from Wish, if Wish is even still up, in Temu and shit, and y'all be thinking y'all know everything African without actually doing y'all motherfucking research. And there's still so much that I need to learn. But this right here shows that, again, if this culture believes in many different deities or many different expressions of the infinite, then why are we having such a problem or having trouble trying to do that as well, and also honor each other's beliefs? Because even this country, the founding fathers did believe in Christianity, but they also believed in Christianity as their own personal belief. But that in this country, you have what is known as the freedom of religion, which means that if my neighbor on the left of me believes that there are 20 fucking gods and the one on the right of me only believes there's only one or no gods, then guess what? Are they objectively hurting me? Are they objectively taking away from my life? If not, what's the fucking problem? What's up, Extra Smoke? I'm off the edible today. True North Collections. Okay? Let's continue further.
Varied across regions, ethnic groups, and cultures.
Right.
These traditions included animism, ancestor worship, and polytheism, all of which were deeply connected to the natural world and the spirits inhabiting it. Additionally, many Africans had embraced Islam through contact with Arab traders and travelers.
And remember that they had contact with Arab traders, black people, Africans in Egypt. Well, Egypt is in Africa, but in Africa. Because again, the third video we're going to see is going to talk about how those people literally came through and murdered a whole bunch of Egyptian people. And the ones who survived forced them to speak Arabic, which is why there are no Egyptians over there that can speak Egyptian as the language.
This introduction to Islam resulted in the conversion of various African communities to the faith.
Right.
Thus, when Africans were uprooted from their homelands, they brought with them a diverse array of spiritual beliefs and practices.
Exactly. And I even said, because again, I do my research, I'm not stuck and trapped in the coffin known as organized religion. I'm outside that bitch. And again, organized religion is God's coffin. It's where it was, where it used to be. But if you pay attention energetically, you can follow it. But like I stated before, when our ancestors came from Africa over to here, because they were so open-minded and they understood energy and they were connected, they were able to also align with some of the saints of the Christian faith, because some of those saints shared the same characteristics of their African spirituality. And again, as we go forward in this live towards the end, when we have a certain individual, I'm gonna show you their video and how they broke it down. They literally copied, the Bible was literally copied off of African spirituality, Egyptian spirituality. They just turned around and, like you see on the screen, how it's whitewashed. Got me a Cadillac, Cadillac, Cadillac. Got me a Cadillac car. Look at me, mister. I'm a star. Lacking Lowry seasoning salt, lacking collard greens and all that shit, girl. The way they whitewash this shit, girl, they have put blueberries and marshmallows in the macaroni and cheese.
Upon their arrival in the New World, enslaved Africans were confronted with a starkly different religious landscape, one dominated by Christianity. Missionaries and slave owners sought to convert enslaved individuals to Christianity as part of their efforts to assert control and justify the institution of slavery. The promise of salvation, eternal life, and spiritual salvation was used as both a carrot and a stick. Conversion could offer some semblance of hope and comfort in the face of unimaginable suffering, while simultaneously serving as a means of asserting authority over the enslaved. Africans were brought to Christian congregations where they were exposed to the teachings and rituals of the faith.
Look at what the fuck is happening over in Uganda today. Look at what's happening in South Africa today. South Africa, if I'm not mistaken, they legalized same-sex marriage years before America did. Then you had evangelicals from America, white to be exact, going over to these spaces and places in Africa and doing exactly the fuck this. That's why we live in the information age. If you the type of niggas that try to get your information from a 1-minute clip, I feel sorry for you. If you're using that 1-minute clip as a bookmark to be like, okay, let me come back to this so I can listen to it in its entirety, If y'all the type of niggas who trying to do this microwavable fast food ass type of logic, y'all gonna fuck yourselves up. This is the motherfucking time to sit the fuck down and put in the fucking work. All this information, but yet the mentally ill one, let it be told by some fupa having ass niggas, is the one bringing the facts, is the one watching the videos, is the one going behind what they're saying to study to show thyself approved, because in order for it to be verified and valid, people would have to do the exact same thing you did in the same manner to yield the same fucking results. So again, for you niggas who are Bible scholars in these red pill spaces, this is the time for y'all to be in the chat. Cause like I've always motherfucking proven and shown my damn self, whether I was on a panel or whether I was in the chat, I was there. And we see that there are some niggas who are losing their motherfucking credibility. It'll be a panel of 8, 9, 10 niggas, girl. Meanwhile, don't nobody know what the fuck they talking about.
This exposure marked the beginning of a spiritual transformation that would unfold over generations. As African individuals became members of Christian congregations, their traditional religious practices began to merge with elements of Christianity.
Exactly.
It was in this context of spiritual upheaval and vulnerability that the slave Bible emerged. The slave Bible, produced in the early 19th century, was a carefully edited and censored version of the Bible, with significant portions omitted. While the Bible is traditionally seen as a source of inspiration, liberation, and moral guidance, this manipulated version sought to erase passages that might challenge the status quo or inspire thoughts of rebellion and emancipation.
See, going forward on my channel, I am going to start having conversations that are going to make people scared. But not only scared, but also create a space for us to be able to have those conversations so that we can work through the fear so we can see what is truly objectively there. Because when you're dealing with fear, you do have options. You can either be frozen in fear and just stand there and let the motherfucking thriller grave ass niggas fuck you up. You could run away and run for your life. Or you can do what I would do. If my life is going to be threatened and possibly taken at that damn time, bitch, I won't be the only one going. I will be swinging and kicking and doing all type of shit. I will be Jack from The Incredibles, girl. Let's bring this to present day. Christianity being used against queer people's rise and ascension. Being used against blackness. Being used against women. Again, all this ex-gay shit popping up from a bunch of motherfuckers who are still gay, girl, but they just don't do it no more. They went back in the closet in the name of Jesus this time. And that's just my subjective belief. Excuse me. Christian people saying, oh, well, we gotta stop being scared. The world, girl. But when Kim Burrell opened her mouth and said what she said, girl, and she got checked because she thought Christianity was gonna be again, like they said earlier, my pardon gift, my pardon card. I get to buy my way out of this shit. I get to find a way. I have a loophole here. She thought that Christianity was her loophole, girl. And then the world dragged her ass to the point to where other Christian people were scared. Didn't we see a video of Tasha Page Lockhart? I believe that's her name, and shout out, she can sing down. But she was saying, oh, in the car crying, oh my God, like how are we gonna be able to tell them the truth without them doing that stuff? We need to get paid. Had Shirley Caesar up there traumatized when somebody picked up the phone. But this is what y'all supposed to be doing anyway. But now you're being called to stand up, and now you're using the Bible as your shield to label people as demons, so that when the time comes for, like it says on the screen here, see these armed men with these red crosses on their chest and these swords? This is literally where the fuck they want to go, because again, the only time that they acknowledge God working in a great way is when it's working through them by way of this sword and this motherfucking shield. Because how many times have I heard when I was on certain red pill platforms and panels that, am I willing to die for this shit? As if though us as queer people have not been asking ourselves that for the longest time, even when we were in the closet and other people saw that we were gay. We didn't have to fucking acknowledge it. They knew it. So in a sense, are you willing to die for this shit? No, I'm willing to live for this shit. It's been enough death and destruction in all of our motherfucking lives. At this point, we just want to live. But we see that with organized religion, there is this unhealthy, toxic, symbiotic relationship that they want to have with us. They need us in the world to judge, to use as a barometer, and to shield them from their own sins that they're committing. Because I heard somebody say on the platform that we shouldn't cherry pick the Bible. We should just look at the main things. Well, what are the main things? And who said those main things are the main things? When it also says that a sin is a sin is a sin and is a sin, and no sin is greater than the other. See, y'all don't want to have these conversations, and then on top of that, y'all feel some type of way when queer people educate themselves and where queer people stand up to y'all, like it's stated, with liberation. Which means that I don't need you to exist. I don't need you to grow, to thrive. I don't need you. Y'all are the ones that need us. Y'all need us in the closet. Y'all need us because we are beneficial to y'all. We have been beneficial to y'all churches for the longest time, both black and queer. Anyway, let's continue.
Today, there are only 3 known copies of the Slave Bible in existence. One copy belongs to Fisk University, and the other 2 are located in the United Kingdom.
Right.
The original Slave Bible was published by Law and Gilbert Publishing House in London, and the copy belonging to Fisk University was published the following year. It was published on behalf of the Society for the Conversion of Negro Slaves to educate enslaved Africans and preserve the system of slavery. The first Slave Bible was published in 1807, 3 years after the Haitian Revolution ended. That revolution was the only slave revolt in history in which enslaved people successfully drove out their European oppressors to form a new nation. And it increased American and European paranoia that the people they oppressed would one day rise up against them.
Hello? Hell fucking low. Did y'all just hear what they just said? Had to take my bonnet off, girl. It's getting a little hot. Did y'all just hear what was stated, what was said? I keep telling y'all be saying y'all don't want to smoke weed and shit, but y'all better get y'all some. No shade. there is a literal pattern that is going on, that has been happening for generations. That's why I said when it comes down to blackness, we are the prototype of this country. All the forms of oppression that is happening in America started with us. They used it on us. Even the individual over in Uganda, where they're now indoctrinating people over there to be Christian and to be anti-queer, which is why the Kills the Gays bill is created. You have queer activists over there who are living the reality that a lot of queer people like myself don't want to manifest, to where they even said that there are people from other countries, i.e. America, that is testing everything negative over here. And why are they testing it over there? To see if it works, so that when the time comes to bring that shit the fuck back home. There is so much that I really want to dig off into and I really want to talk about, but I can only have that conversation with individuals who are prepared for that. That's why I be telling people, y'all better think about death, and think about death a lot. And whatever panic attack or fear-induced situation that comes about, you better sit in that motherfucker and deal with that. Because if you don't, when the real shit hits the fan, girl, some of y'all ain't ready. And I'm talking to the ones who are. If you are ready, let me know.
The Haitian Revolution could have been a motivation for publishing a Bible without the part where Moses tells the Pharaoh to let my people go.
My people.
Missionaries and planters may have thought that Christianity, at least certain parts of it, would protect against revolutions by teaching enslaved people to respect their masters. Slaveholders and colonial authorities recognized the potential threat posed by a literate enslaved population. They feared that if Africans had access to the complete Bible, they might find inspiration for resistance, liberation, and equality within its pages.
So when the fags do it, it's a problem and an issue. When black people ended up reading the bitch and saying, hold on, white people, hold on, white Christians, what the fuck is this about, the slave Bible? There's an issue, there's a problem. Whenever women use the Bible for liberation, there's a problem. Like, do y'all not see this?
To ensure this doesn't happen, certain passages within the context of the Slave Bible were meticulously selected to promote the idea of submission and obedience among the enslaved population. These passages were wielded as powerful tools to reinforce the notion that servitude was not only a worldly duty, but also a divine mandate. One of such was the curse of Ham in the book of Genesis in the words of the King James Bible, which was the version then current. These were, first, Genesis 9:18-27. And the sons of Noah that went forth from the ark were Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And Ham is the father of Canaan. These are the three sons of Noah, and of them was the whole world overspread.
That's how I know I'm walking in what the fuck I'm walking in, which is true, because again, when we get to the actual black person, I'm gonna let, again, the third video, they spoke about Noah. I just want
And
to point that
Noah
out.
began to be an husbandman, and he planted a vineyard, and he drank of the wine and was drunken, and he was uncovered within his tent. And Ham, the father of Canaan, saw the nakedness of his father, and told his two brethren without. And Shem and Japheth took a garment, and laid it upon both their shoulders, and went backward, and covered the nakedness of their father, and their faces were backward, and they saw not their father's nakedness. And Noah awoke from his wine, and knew what his younger son had done unto him. And he said, Cursed be Canaan, a servant of servants shall he be unto his brethren. And he said, Blessed be the Lord God of Shem, and Canaan shall be his servant. God shall enlarge Japheth, and he shall dwell in the tents of Shem, and Canaan shall be his servant. And Noah lived after the flood 350 years. While the biblical account itself raises questions and challenges, it was the distorted and popularized version known as the Curse of Ham that became a foundational text for those seeking to justify the enslavement of Africans on purportedly biblical grounds. The original story mentions that Canaan, the son of Ham, would bear the curse. However, in the Curse of Ham, Canaan's name is omitted. This omission allowed for a broader application of the curse to all of Ham's descendants. Ham was portrayed as black in the Curse of Ham.
Wow.
This portrayal was a misinterpretation of the biblical text, which provided no description of Ham's physical appearance. This false characterization was used to associate Ham and his descendants with Africans. Building on the false portrayal of Ham, his descendants were broadly identified as Africans. This identification, devoid of any biblical basis, was used to justify the enslavement of African people. The Curse of Ham was utilized to argue that God had ordained the enslavement of Africans as punishment for Ham's supposed sin of seeing his father's nakedness.
Now again, look at this in reference to Christianity. They haven't just done this to black people. But in America, we was the start of this shit. But this has been happening before slavery. The fuck? This type of mindset, this type of narcissistic, egotistical ass mindset, that its main purpose, sole purpose, is to manifest as much worldly power as they possibly can, not to use it to help enhance themselves or to better themselves or to work out their own soul salvation, but to acquire all this shit so I can go ahead and judge you and be distracted from working out my own soul salvation. Didn't you just hear how the certain person was omitted from that to make it broader in reference to who this curse follows or falls under or covers?
This distorted interpretation provided a religious justification for the brutal practice of slavery. The Curse of Ham found a receptive audience among those seeking to rationalize the enslavement of African individuals. Proponents of slavery, particularly in the American context, wielded this misinterpretation as a powerful tool to perpetuate their agenda. It was disseminated through literature, sermons, and other means, infiltrating the collective consciousness of societies. The consequences of this distorted narrative were profound and devastating.
Unfortunately.
It contributed to the dehumanization of African people and the establishment of systems of racial hierarchy.
Make sure y'all subscribe.
African individuals were viewed as cursed by divine decree,
Wow.
perpetuating their status as chattel and justifying the horrific abuses inflicted upon them. In addition to this, there are other passages used to enforce slavery and encourage obedience. Some of these include Ephesians 6:5, which says, "Slaves,
We heard this
obey
before.
your earthly masters with fear and trembling, with a sincere heart, as you would Christ." This verse from the New Testament is perhaps one of the most frequently cited passages in the
New
slave
Testament.
Bible to encourage obedience. The verse implies that obedience to earthly masters is akin to serving Christ himself. This interpretation elevated servitude to a sacred duty, fostering the belief that compliance with enslavers was not merely a matter of social order, but also a religious obligation. Enslaved Africans were taught that by serving their masters diligently and sincerely, they were not only fulfilling their earthly duties, but also earning favor in the eyes of God.
Serve your master. Again, in the first video, we saw how you could do that. You can let your child, you can give a child away. You can donate to the church. You can get you a pardon card. And I'm gonna get to y'all comments after the video, I promise. But how do you think that happened during slavery, girl? Oh, that means you gotta watch You gotta be that Negro on the field, girl, that's watching the other Negroes. You gotta be watching out for them Harriet Tubman spirited motherfuckers, girl, who wanna leave. And the fact that these slave masters were on a Joe Jackson shit where one person fuck up, everybody getting fucked up. Where they dial one number, everybody phone motherfucking ringing. That gives them an extra fear-based incentive to make sure that they are policing other people to make sure that they ain't doing that shit. Again, that fear-based ideology being put broadly on us as people, especially here in America. I already told y'all, at this motherfucking point, everybody about to know what it feels like to be a fag, to be a nigga. Everybody about to find out what that feels like.
This deeply ingrained spiritual coercion had a profound impact on their psyche. It left them torn between the desire for spiritual redemption and the yearning for earthly freedom. Another verse is Colossians 3:22, which says, "Slaves, obey in everything those who are your earthly masters, not by way of eye service as people pleasers, but with sincerity of heart, fearing the Lord." This is another passage from the New Testament, reinforced the theme of unwavering obedience. It admonished enslaved individuals to obey their masters in all matters, not merely when under close scrutiny or to please others. Instead, they were urged to carry out their servitude with sincerity of heart and reverence for the Lord. The interpretation of this passage emphasized that even in the absence of direct supervision, enslaved individuals were to remain steadfast in their obedience. The fear of the Lord was invoked to underscore the gravity of this command, further deepening the sense of spiritual duty. Slaveholders recognized the power of religion in shaping the beliefs and actions of enslaved Africans. By emphasizing these passages, they aimed to legitimize their oppressive system and dissuade any thoughts of rebellion or resistance. The message was clear. Obedience was not only expected, but divinely mandated. A message carefully curated to maintain control over those in bondage. These carefully selected passages played a pivotal role in shaping the psychological landscape of enslaved Africans. The constant exposure to such teachings instilled a complex web of emotions and beliefs. On one hand, they grappled with the desire to attain spiritual salvation and please a divine entity. On the other hand, they faced the harsh reality of subjugation and the yearning for personal freedom. The dichotomy between their spiritual obligations and their human aspirations left many enslaved individuals in a state of inner turmoil. They found themselves torn between their duties as defined by the slave Bible and their innate longing for autonomy and equality. In the troubling history of the slave Bible, the promotion and distribution of this modified text were not limited to enslavers alone. Rather, it saw the involvement of various religious figures, including bishops, pastors, and missionaries who, perhaps paradoxically, lent their support to this distorted version of the Holy Scriptures. Among these figures, Reverend C.F. Morgan, a prominent Anglican bishop in Jamaica, stood out as a key advocate for the slave Bible. To comprehend the scope of his endorsement and that of other religious leaders, we must delve into the complex motivations and justifications behind their actions. The Anglican bishop, Reverend C.F. Morgan, played a pivotal role in the dissemination of the slave Bible, particularly in the context of Jamaica. His endorsement of this modified scripture raised important questions about the intersections of faith, power, and social control during the era of slavery. Morgan's support for the slave Bible was rooted in his belief that it served as a tool for maintaining social order and control among the enslaved population. To comprehend his perspective, we must consider the broader context in which he operated. During the period of slavery, religion was often employed both as a means of subjugation and as a source of hope and resistance. Enslaved individuals were exposed to Christian teachings, but the interpretation of these teachings varied widely. On one hand, there were religious leaders like Morgan who espoused a view of Christianity that reinforced existing power structures. They saw the modified Bible as a way to legitimize the institution of slavery, emphasizing obedience, submission, and servitude as religious duties. In their eyes, this interpretation not only maintained social order, but also provided a spiritual rationale for the oppressive system. Morgan's support for the slave Bible underscores the power dynamics at play during this tumultuous period. As a religious authority figure, his words held immense sway over the enslaved population.
Girl, why the fuck he look like Victor, West old girl daddy from Underworld and shit?
By endorsing this distorted text, he effectively reinforced the existing hierarchy, with enslavers at the top and the enslaved at the bottom. The use of religion to justify slavery was not unique to Morgan or the Anglican Church. Across denominations, there were individuals who used their religious authority to endorse and perpetuate the institution of slavery.
Of course.
Most of these individuals focused on the curse of Ham and supported the interpretation, and often used it to legitimize the enslavement of Africans.
Just like how the Bible is used against queer people. Oh, well, the Bible does say that they're abominations. And the Bible does say that they will never inherit the kingdom of heaven. And look at what they're doing to the children. So again, there is this fear-based narrative that these individuals cannot prove that is factually and objectively, alarmingly, overwhelmingly happening, to cause or create such a fear around queer people. But then you have the children, which the parents should be worried about, but they really not worried about until it's used as a fucking talking point. But then uses an invisible force that they even struggle to have a connection with, which is why they have their pastor do it for them. But they can use it as part of society against queer people. So now the fear narrative has been solidified in the physical realm by the children, and how there is this predatory thing that queer people naturally and purposely are doing to children that y'all cannot prove again, but y'all think that's the case. So that's solidified, and now you have solidified it in the spirit realm and the afterlife as well, to say that if you are this person, this is who you are. And the issue is with Christianity and organized religion is that there are people in the world who participate in organized religion who then go back out into the world, and because of their fear-based lens, they start to use that against other people in the world, but then have a nerve, or have the nerve, to feel some type of way when the world uses it against them, as if though they are exempt. But that is what organized religion teaches. And it really teaches that your ass is exempt, especially if you have the coin. If you are coined out of control, if you got that green, that mighty dollar, if you got all that shit, we can look past some shit. We can overlook some shit. We can pretend like no shit ain't happened. But God sees all, correct? And isn't that the one that should be the most important in reference to not pissing off? Interesting.
And to reinforce racial hierarchies. They believed that the curse of Ham justified the subjugation of black people and their enslavement by white Europeans and Americans. The likes of Reverend Alexander MacLeod is a famous example. Reverend Alexander MacLeod was a prominent Presbyterian minister in the United States during the late 18th and early 19th centuries.
Wow.
In his influential pamphlet, Negro Slavery Unjustifiable, published in 1802, MacLeod argued that slavery was not only justifiable, but also part of God's divine plan. He invoked the curse of Ham as biblical support for his argument. MacLeod contended that Ham's descendants were cursed by God, and this curse extended to black Africans. He believed that this curse justified their enslavement as a form of divine punishment. MacLeod's pamphlet was widely circulated and contributed to the theological underpinnings of pro-slavery arguments within the Christian community. Another is Reverend Richard Furman. Reverend Richard Furman was a prominent Baptist minister in the early 19th century, known for his strong defense of slavery. In 1822, he wrote a letter to South Carolina Governor John Drayton, in which he articulated his views on slavery and its compatibility with Christian principles. Furman asserted that slavery was not inconsistent with Christian morality and cited the curse of Ham as biblical justification for the enslavement of black people. He argued that the institution of slavery was ordained by God and that it served as a means to bring enslaved Africans to Christianity. Furman's letter added religious legitimacy to the pro-slavery stance and reinforced the belief that slavery was a divine institution. Another Baptist minister known as Reverend Thornton Stringfellow would agree with Furman. In 1856, he authored a pamphlet titled Scriptural and Statistical Views in Favor of Slavery. This pamphlet aimed to provide a biblical and statistical defense of slavery. Stringfellow used numerous biblical passages, including those related to the curse of Ham, to argue that slavery was not only consistent with Christian teachings, but also divinely ordained. He contended that black Africans were descendants of Ham and, as such, were destined to be servants. Stringfellow's pamphlet sought to bolster the pro-slavery argument within the religious community. Even the Presbyterian Church was in on it. Reverend Josiah Priest was a Presbyterian minister and author who penned the book Bible Defense of Slavery in 1851. In this book, Priest aimed to provide a comprehensive biblical defense of slavery, drawing upon various passages from the Bible. Like the other religious leaders mentioned, Priest invoked the curse of Ham as evidence of God's approval of slavery. He argued that the enslavement of black people was in line with God's divine plan and that slaveholders were acting in accordance with biblical principles. Bible defense of slavery was part of the broader pro-slavery literature that used religious arguments to support the institution of slavery. These religious leaders and their writings played a significant role in shaping the theological and moral landscape of the pro-slavery movement in the United States. Their interpretations of biblical passages, particularly those related to the curse of Ham, provided religious justifications for the enslavement of black Africans and contributed to the deeply entrenched system of slavery in the country. The Slave Bible didn't only focus on passages that enforced obedience, suppressed rebellion, and ensured the continued subjugation of enslaved African populations, but it also deliberately omitted several passages to prevent the inspiration of freedom, equality, and justice among the oppressed. One of the most glaring omissions from the Slave Bible was the book of Exodus. This deliberate exclusion was far from accidental. It was a calculated...
And isn't Exodus, wasn't that named one of the biggest ex-gay ministries? Wasn't it called Exodus? Let me double check. What's it called? Exodus?
Strategy aimed at erasing a story that embodied the pursuit of freedom and the triumph of justice. In Exodus, the narrative unfolds as the Israelites enslaved in Egypt seek liberation under the guidance of Moses. Their journey from bondage to freedom, marked by miraculous events and divine intervention, has resonated with oppressed people throughout history. The removal of Exodus from the Slave Bible was strategic because it contained powerful themes that could have inspired enslaved Africans to aspire to their own emancipation. The story of God's justice, His intervention on behalf of the oppressed, and the ultimate escape from tyranny was a narrative that slaveholders feared would embolden those in bondage. The omission of Exodus effectively deprived enslaved Africans of a tale that could have fueled their desire for liberation. Within the complete Bible, there are verses that emphasize freedom, justice, and the call to resist oppression. These verses were anathema to slaveholders. as they posed a direct challenge to the institution of slavery. Galatians 3:28, for instance, proclaims, "There is neither Jew nor Greek. There is neither slave nor free. There is no male and female, for you are all..."
So I guess that ends the whole trans conversation right there when it comes down to the Bible. That there is none of this motherfucking man-made, goddamn, divisional ass type of lines that we play into. So their male and female don't even really matter because, again, we are all what, one, right? So that should end the argument against trans people and queer community right there in the book.
One in Christ Jesus. This powerful message of equality among believers directly contradicted the racial hierarchy and the legitimacy of slavery. The slave Bible doesn't include Moses leading the Israelites to freedom, but it does include Joseph's enslavement in Egypt. In the U.S., some sermons aimed at enslaved people portrayed Joseph as someone who accepts his lot in life, keeps his faith in God, and in the end is rewarded for it. The slave Bible may have wanted to impart a similar lesson to its audience. In the slave Bible, such verses were ruthlessly excluded to prevent any suggestion of equality among enslaved individuals. The deliberate omission of these passages aimed to maintain a rigid hierarchy where slaveholders could justify their dominance and argue that divine approval lay with the institution of slavery. By silencing these messages of freedom and equality, the oppressors sought to maintain control over the minds and spirits of the enslaved. The slave Bible stands as a reminder of how religion can be twisted and manipulated to justify cruelty and oppression. Ministers and pastors use the Word of God to support the inhumane institution of slavery, promoting a distorted message of obedience and submission among the enslaved population. While the slave Bible exists today as a historical artifact, it serves as a proof to the lengths some individuals went to uphold their unjust practices. It reminds us of the importance of critical thinking and questioning, even when religious authority is invoked to promote harmful ideologies. This brings us to the end of this video. Tell us.
So with that being said, first of all, I don't want to hear nobody tell me, oh, you cannot sit up here and try to mix black issues with queer issues. Well, as a black queer person, I'm telling you energetically, they're the fucking same. The root of the issue is oppression. But what is the oppression of? The oppression because of the color of your skin. Oppression because of your sexual orientation or gender identity or expression. Oppression because you're a female, which means that statistically speaking, societally speaking, divinely speaking, let these people say it, you can't do what I do. Even though we saw that scripture that literally said what it said. Let me look at y'all comments before we get to our last video of the night. Let me see. Extra Smoke, if you're still up in here, what's going on? Deshaun said, you're right. Back in the day, Africans were not a monolith, but now they are like Uganda. And I'm talking to my friends on Twitter and WhatsApps about it. That is from there. Please keep me updated with what they going through. One of my friends told me, because I told him you can't control who they love. He said, you're right, because if you do, there's people that's committing suicide. They have to go through this. The suicide rate is so high where they are, it's ridiculous. This week they was telling me, also we were talking about children that can marry children, and in some places in the country you can. And then you have these people in these places and spaces who will try to use the statistics of, oh, well, y'all over there, y'all taking y'all lives at an alarming rate. Y'all dealing with mental issues and mental health stuff at an alarming rate. Y'all the ones that's dealing with this stuff, and y'all want people to be queer. Yeah, the reason why we're dealing with all this shit is because even though we liberated ourselves, we still live in a world that fails to do that and will do whatever is in their power to try to again destroy the liberation of self. Just like how that slave Bible indoctrinated people, the slaves, to be again faithful to their earthly masters, and any of your other nigga friends, nigga brother and sister, and if they do anything out of the ordinary that threatens what it is that we have control over here, if you don't call them out and we catch them and we discover that you knew about this and you didn't open your mouth to say a motherfucking thing, guess what? Your ass gets it as well. Look at the white people who also put their lives on the line in reference to slavery, in reference to helping oppressed groups of people, black people at that time, to go to freedom, to manifest freedom, to embrace freedom. And if they were caught helping these niggas escape, what happened to them? Huh? So again, to the black Christians, get out y'all motherfucking comfort zone and go do what y'all pastor tell y'all to do. To go therefore and teach all nations, which means come over to the nation of the BubzDaGawd, Bubzzzfloww, and share what you believe. But you're gonna have to also deal with what the fuck we talking about too. Especially if you claim a religion that's all about the light, that's all about the truth. Deal with this one, the bloody one. That's crazy as far as what's going over in Uganda and how they dealing with that. And Deshaun, I'm gonna have to see if I can talk to you, and possibly you can talk to your friend if they want to see if I can do a live or something and get them their reports, their experiences, since they're on the ground level. Because what's happening on the screen, they already low-key testing that out and doing that over in Uganda. Deshaun also says, Style by Stevie, not only that they're weird, but there are Republicans there that are also ex-gays. Some of them are DL that talk to teenagers. I mean, at the Republican National Convention, didn't Grindr get shut the fuck down? They servers was overloaded and shit. One of the hamsters jumped off the hamster wheel and crawled up somebody's ass like Mr. Slave. Jesus Christ. And shout out to TF. I'm gonna mess your last name up, so I'm just call you TF because right now I can't pronounce it. But if you're still in the building, thank you. I appreciate it. And I believe you said that you are a new subby, so shout out to you. And yes, when I was singing that song, that Cadillac song, that's what I thought. That's how I know what I'm saying is on some shit, some real shit. Deshaun also says stopping anything of being feminine, but they're not done. Also sexuality, got it. That is homosexuality. TF says the surviving Egyptians kept the Coptic language, which is the closest to ancient Egyptian. They only use it, ooh Lord, liturgically, girl, that word. So it's considered a dead language. Wow. Because Hannibal's sexual in the Republic, what? Hannibal? Because Hannibal's sexual in the Republicans Party believe that works. Where's the gays that changed their life, told them stories? Maybe the ones that are free can be changed to the confident gays. What's going on, Ron? What's up? Make sure y'all hit that like button. It helps this channel to grow. That's what you can do. Okay? And not those are closeted sleep agents. I don't want to think about them in any way, shape, or form. Stevie says, child, don't even get me started on Shirley Caesar hammock knock-kneed ass. She was right up there siding with Kim Burrell and her homophobia. And there's alleged things about her. No shade, because she ain't got no damn husband. So at this damn point, you shouldn't be singing from the Lord if you ain't got no husband. Didn't Kurt Franklin say? that if you're gonna serve in the church, you're gonna have to be married, even if y'all don't fucking like each other, because it's all about pretending that we got it together. Okay? Black and queer indirectly created music of America, since it all originated by black gospel and jazz, which was heavily queer coded. Okay. And Ron says, I wonder if BMU is watching. I don't know, girl, because if they can't sit here and watch a damn 33-minute video so that when they get on a platform, they know what the hell they talking about. If they ain't doing that, ain't no way they gonna sit through my shit. See, no shade. You're gonna have to have a higher level of awareness and thinking and scholastic excellence to be able to rock with my lives. No shade. We see who the C students are and the A ones are. No shade. And I have the mind of a A student, but I have the work ethic of a C one, because the C one is also street smart. Okay? But now the last video that we're going to take a look at tonight is from an individual who is on a higher level of awareness and learning, who is very respected in the circles that he's in. Okay, and he is one of my father's favorite YouTubers, podcasters, like my favorite a source of knowledge, if you will. I have a few of his books that I have not read yet, but I will. And that individual is known as Billy Carson. Now, if you don't know about Billy Carson again is very, very reputable and knowledgeable in what he does. He always challenges individuals who are pastors, preachers, those who are theologians, those who are into debating about the word of God. He invites them all the time, and nobody really shows up because ain't nobody gonna put in the work like he did. And what he is going to say for the average Christian is going to consider to be blasphemous. But again, when you start loving yourself and you start strengthening your foundation, you transcend the Bible. As blasphemous as that may sound to some people, for those of us who walk through the fear, you transcend that. And he has completely transcended that to where we start getting into conversations about things that can really wake up humanity. And since that is one of the reasons, or one of the purposes in my life, that's why we're going to take a listen to that video. Now, this video is going to be like 50 minutes long. So again, this is going to be a lengthy ass live. So listen to this while you got something, while you're doing something, have this on in the background. This is podcast like. I want you to listen to what's being said, comprehend what's being said. Okay? So anyway, let's go ahead and get into that video. Again, copyright disclaimer, okay? Fair use enacted.
Well, the Bible has a lot of good information in it. If you can apply some of the information, it can really change your life. It can really put you on the right path. But it also has some information in there that's detrimental to people as well. You have to have discernment with what you're reading in the book, in the Bible. In the Bible, where you see the word God everywhere, that's a mistranslation by accident on purpose. The original word is God's with an S. It's always with an S when you back engineer the actual word.
And no shade. Do y'all remember the scripture that reads, "Let us make man in our image, in our likeness"? Who the fuck is our?
But the translations, you find out it's God's, not God singular. Elohim is also a plural term. It's not a singular term. And you also discover that Yahweh is actually Enlil from the Sumerian cuneiform pantheon, from the Sumerian cuneiform text. He's Enlil. It becomes Yahweh in the biblical text. And there's all these correlations between the different ancient characters from the Sumerian text end up in the biblical text. And you find out in the book of Deuteronomy that these gods are fighting each other over resources and people. So if you read, anyone who reads the book of Deuteronomy begins to realize this probably isn't the creator of the universe that wrote this. When God tells people, God is supposed to be all-knowing, all-loving, ain't he the same all the time? Then all of a sudden, you read in the book of Deuteronomy and he's saying, there's one person in this city that doesn't like me. I want you guys to go over there. Now, keep in mind, they've never met these people. kill the women, kill the children, kill their animals, and bring the spoils of war back to me.
Okay, Christians, I need y'all to explain that. I need y'all to explain that. Because it seems like, again, looking at the screen, that's where y'all want to go. It seems like this is what y'all calling for when y'all speak about revival, when you speak about a restoration. It is in a restoration and revival covered in blood of innocent people. Let's continue further.
Now, what kind of God needs the spoils of war, and what kind of God needs to kill children? There's also a verse in there in the book of Deuteronomy where God tells a man, if you see a woman walking through the land and you decide to rape her, and the word rape is the actual word, look it up, you can. And if after you rape her, if you decide you want to make her your wife, you can keep her as your wife too. Now you have rape and abduction.
Okay, again, black Christians, where y'all at? Can y'all explain that? Because if we're going back to the biblical ways, it seems like a lot of y'all daughters, no matter if they hoes or if they're the college, high school sweetheart girl that is doing what mommy and daddy has asked of her to do, according to the scriptures, girl, if a man decides to take her innocence and deflower her, that he also has the ability to also marry her. And y'all saying toxic masculinity and toxic patriarchy doesn't exist, and that is a made-up term with an actuality that scripture just showed that. And again, how many thousands of years that was?
Now, you're saying to yourself, the creator of the universe, okay, has all power, all-knowing, omnipotent, omniscient. Why in the world would he write stuff like that, or give a man the ability to write stuff like that to put in his book? In some cases, it's not talking about the creator of the universe. We have to be able to discern that. We have to be able to have the eye to see that some of this is manipulation for the power of people to put on top of other people. In the New Testament, Jesus says, honor your slave master. Now, why would we want to honor a slave master?
We just talked about that.
As you would honor me, he says. Do you think Jesus really would say something like that? I don't. I think that his message was pure and clean and clear, that he was trying to usher back a level of Christ consciousness back in humanity. And that's the return. The second return is when we all reach a level of Christ consciousness. That's when Jesus comes back. He comes back in our minds, not in a physical form. And
he kept saying that again, according to the narrative, by the renewing of your mind, by the renewing of your mind, by the renewing of your mind, let this mind that be in me also be in you. Let this mind that also be in me also be in you. Let this mind that also be in Christ be in over there at BMU. Let the mind of Christ actually manifest over there on BMU. Do you get what I'm saying? It is a way of thinking. It's a way of believing. He didn't walk around with a book. He didn't say, hold on, y'all, let me turn this chapter real quick. 1 second, y'all. I was gone from the scriptures for a long time, so I ain't go to Bible study, so it's gonna take me a minute to find the chapter. Hold on. He didn't do any of that. He spent time, as you will hear later on in the video, going to the Egyptian mystery schools. Because again, we're talking about things that are not part of Western culture. We're talking about things that are part of the Eastern culture, that are more about spirituality, more about connection, frequency, vibration, Mother Nature. Actually communing with Source. And again, black Christians, y'all gotta make this make sense to me.
For people to take his words and skewer it around to make it okay for slavery, I think that's a big thing where we see now the injection of human minds, not the creator of the universe. So you have to be discerning with the biblical text.
Who is Jesus to you? In your eyes, who is Jesus?
His name is Yeshua, okay? Jesus is, first the J is a recent letter. The J is not that old. So it really was originally Isus, and that name Isus means Hail Zeus, okay? So you're calling on Zeus when you say Jesus. One of the Sumerian people who converted over to the Greek gods. But his name is Yeshua, and so Yeshua to me, very powerful person, very spiritual, high level of knowledge, a student of the Egyptian mysteries. When Jesus disappears from the Bible, he actually ends up in Egypt, okay? You can find this information in a book that was kept out of the biblical text called the Gospel of the Holy 12. And in the Gospel of the Holy 12, he shows up in Egypt, and we know that's a fact because I take people on tour every year to Egypt, and I take them to the house that Jesus lived in. It's a crypt. It's actually worship. People come there to see that bed that he laid in every single year. When I take people there, we take them straight there. And we know the path that he traveled throughout Egypt because it's a huge sign outside that Coptic church where he lived that shows where he went. Now, when he was in Egypt, what did he go there for? To learn the Egyptian mysteries. Who taught the Egyptian mysteries? Thoth, the Atlantean priest king, the person I wrote this book about. And so Thoth was the teacher of the Egyptian mysteries, or the ancient mysteries, of what it was called. And then he leaves there and he goes to Tibet to learn Qigong and Reiki healing, which was confirmed by the Dalai Lama. And then he heads down into India to learn the mystic arts, teaching reincarnation all the way back. Then the Bible picks him up at the age of 32. I called my son out of Egypt.
Do y'all even be reading the book? That's why I say, in order for us to really change our narrative, we gonna have to face fear. The reason why these people be so scared is because they have, unfortunately, put so much time, effort, energy, money, investment over generations into this way of believing that never really taught you how to complete the fucking circle, which means believing in yourself. Because nothing good can come to you, especially with you to be able to be aware of it and to receive it, if you do not include yourself into it. But organized religion, as you will hear later on, has taught us that we are filthy, dirty rags, that before we were born into sin and into iniquity. Before we could factually and objectively do anything to be considered a sin, we're already covered in that, and then been told that the only person that can do it, as far as redemption is concerned, is Jesus Christ. I remember when I was in organized religion and the songs that we would sing, being part of the praise team. I'm lost without you, I'm desperate for you, I'm dirty, I'm filthy, I'm this nasty thing. How could you love me, God? How could you do this for me? How could you keep me going? All this other type of stuff. And you wonder why a lot of our prayers are not answered. Because we already cutting ourselves off from receiving the prayer because we believe that we're not worthy of it. When in that same motherfucking book, didn't Christ in the narrative say that ye are gods? You ain't the big G as far as the big God over everybody else. You are the little God connected to the big God in your life. And that you will go forth and do far greater works than me. So why do y'all keep singing that I'm the only one that can do it when that is not the case? When I tell y'all organized religion has done a number on us, it's got us to the point to where we believe in our own detriment. It's got us to the point to where we subscribe into our own demise. and then want to talk to us, especially the queer people. Oh, well, y'all can't procreate, y'all can't bring life into this world. And having conversations with other queer people who don't want kids. I do, but now that I talk to them and think about it, if this is where the fuck we're about to go down as far as this route of death and destruction, why the fuck would I bring children into this shit? When y'all don't even care about the children that's already here, let alone the children that survived their onslaught to grow up to become adults.
He shows up on the back of a donkey, proclaims himself to be the Messiah. So it's a big story. I think that he had a big message. I don't think people were able to grasp it at the time. But his message was that not that he was coming back, but that the Christ would return, the Christ consciousness.
Where did you get this info? What book did you read that said this? Because this isn't, you didn't come up with this, you read this from somewhere. What did you read that told you this?
The Gospel of the Holy 12.
The Gospel of the Holy 12.
Another apocrypha text that was kept out of the canonized Bible.
Got it. And that's what you learned from this?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So let me ask you, there's a lot of people that, smart people, mathematicians, a lot of skeptics that are out there as well. How many people agree with what you have to say? How many people agree with this?
Well, I got 8 million people following my accounts across all platforms. I mean, I don't know.
So I'm not talking about that part. Of course, when you're talking with this level of firmness, there's a lot of that's why I'm curious. I'm curious to know how you come up with your beliefs.
Yeah.
But why is it, if that's what you believe in, more people don't believe in that? Why do you think such a small sect?
When you're born, you're given a name, a race, and a religion,
right,
and you spend the rest of your life defending a false identity.
Oh. The nail on the motherfucking head. What's up, Let's Talk? That's it. I had to just put a pin in that.
You don't know who you are. I don't know who I am. You were given your name. I was given my name. Who's Billy Carson? I didn't come up with that name. Somebody gave me that name. And then somebody said, get on your knees and pray before you go to bed. Say the Lord's Prayer before you go to bed. And so I got on my knees and I said the Lord's Prayer. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come, But then when you trace back that Lord's Prayer, whose prayer is that? That's the prayer of Ptah. Who's Ptah? Ea Enki from the Sumerian tablets. He wrote that prayer in ancient cuneiform, which then made it all the way into the Bible. And you think you're praying to God, you're saying the prayer of Ptah. So we've been brainwashed. We've been programmed because for generations, we keep getting handed down this system where we're given this false creation of who we are, and we believe it wholeheartedly. We'll fight for it to the absolute death. People will die over those things that were given to them, not that they came up with on their own initially or originally.
So imagine what that means for people who are queer. Because again, y'all not just gonna let queer people survive, let alone thrive, let alone exist, if Christian nationalism comes to that point. Because again, if you allow these people to live and exist, that shows that y'all not really walking in power, which is why they have to use fear and intimidation to create power, to show and flex their power, and then have the nerve to say this is us restoring order to chaos. Are y'all not like paying attention to what the fuck's being said by all of these people in these spaces?
So it's a dangerous thing because we have a lot of people walking around that just took the programming code and they don't even understand really who they are, what they're all about. That's why so many people don't walk in their passion. So many people don't even know what their passion is because they've been given and told what their passion is going to be, and they have no clue how to find out who they really truly are or what they would love to be involved in or what their passion truly is. So we have a lot of NPCs walking around, non-players out here just walking around, have no clue, just programs in the matrix. But then you have a few of us that have discovered who we are, that are working on trying to go to inner space instead of outer space, dig deep within ourselves, learn how to walk in our power, find out what our passion is, maximize that, and access that power, and spread that power throughout the world.
Would you say your parents were Christians?
They were quasi-Christians. So they didn't go to church, but you know, my dad would make me do book reports on the Bible from the time I was a little kid. My mother would make me say the prayers, you know. So in that way, they were Christians.
When did you stop?
I stopped probably, I say, maybe around 12 or 13. I realized something was too much. There was too much contradiction in the text. Because remember, I'm doing book reports on the biblical text, and when I got to the point where God said, "I create the good and I create the evil. Do what I say, the Lord." That's in Isaiah.
Yeah,
and I realized something was really off here, because I realized through my studies that God had killed over 3 million people in the Bible, and the Satan didn't kill anybody.
Oh, wow.
So I said, wait a minute, something's a little off here. He's killing everybody, and Satan didn't kill anybody. And so we have to really take a look. And the deeper I dug into Deuteronomy, then I realized there's something wrong. What it was at that moment, I couldn't figure out, but I just knew something was a little off. I dabbled in it again later on to see maybe if there was something that I missed. And again, later on in my life, in my late 20s, I said, just doesn't make any sense. There's too many question marks. And every time you ask a question, they say, don't question God. Don't question the Lord. Blind faith.
That part.
And I'm thinking, if I'm going to put all of my eternity into one book, if I'm saying this one book is going to lead me to eternity, and I don't know everything about it, every aspect about it, I can't question it, I can't dig deeper to get more knowledge out of it, then I think there's something wrong with that. I think there's something being hidden from me. And I'd rather be able to dig deeper, get more knowledge, get more understanding, versus people shunning me away from trying to dig deeper to get more answers. And I think that's a big problem. And I think the people that are shunning away and stopping you from getting those answers don't have the answers themselves.
Did y'all hear that? Have we not been watching and doing commentary on platforms that say they know about queerness and don't know a damn thing? Come on, y'all. I can't make this shit up. This is the reality. And all that's happening now from a spiritual standpoint is the fact that all things are being exposed. It shows again how so many people don't even really know who Christ is. They're more aware that they've been serving organized religion and the God of that. They never served they never served the God that loves humanity. And even when you bring up humanity, they have to bring up all these horrible extremes of it. And then when we ask them to prove those extremes to be objectively true for all of us, they can't do it. And then we'll hold on to said fear, because if I challenge that fear, then I'm challenging pretty much everything I've been taught to believe. And like Billy Carson said, some of these individuals are willing to die for it, or unfortunately, rather, they're ready to kill over it.
When you went through this journey that you're going through, are your parents seeing you go through the self-actualization where you're having your own philosophies? Are they watching you, witnessing you going through this?
Oh, yeah.
So how old were you when they're watching this?
I mean, pretty much from 7 all the way up. I mean, they gradually saw me changing. When I was 7 years old, you know, I realized one thing. This is what's changed my whole life. My friends kept going to the ice cream truck. They had money every day, even though we were in the ghetto, poor, broke. We had nothing. We're getting money donated to us from food donated to us from local church and other people in the neighborhood. And we were taking showers outside in the backyard because we didn't have water on. We'd plug the hose into our neighbor's house. And I'm saying, how in the hell can they afford the ice cream truck every single day? So I go outside and I say to myself, there's got to be something I can do. I said, I'm going to go inside and get all my toys. I put all my toys in an old Winn-Dixie milk crate, and I went door to door. I violated my mom's rules about leaving the circumference of the
vicinity,
house. Yeah. And I went door to door around the whole block. I squared the block and asked for donations for in exchange for my toys. And so I sold all my toys that day, and I ended up with like $13 and change. And I went to the ice cream truck, and I got my bazooka bubble gum with my comic strip inside of it, and I realized something. I said, wow, I'm going to save myself. There's nobody coming to save me. I am my own savior. And that changed my life forever. And that same
7
day,
years old?
7 years old. My mom saw me standing in the picture window of the house we were renting, and I had a couple of dollars in my hand. She said, what's wrong, son? I said, I don't belong here. I'm getting out. Was the Bible copied from ancient text regarding the biblical text and the ancient Sumerian?
Now listen to this. Listen to this part.
Tablets. Let's start talking about the biblical text. First of all, we're talking about the civilization that lived in Mesopotamia. Now, Mesopotamia is an ancient region which used to, in ancient time, encompass part of Africa. Now, due to the modern era and the redrawing of boundaries, you see where Africa starts, but Africa extended up into the Middle East in that time frame. And these people were part of the African continent. Over time, as Mesopotamia became Iraq and Iran and the Middle East, and there's a whole story behind that because we know that the Arabs invaded that region. They attacked, they killed a lot of people in order to subdue the land and subdue the area, including Egyptians. And this is not anything that I'm doing to agitate anybody, it's just a fact. They teach you this when you go to Egypt. I mean, the story is right there in Coptic Cairo. The Arabs came in and they slaughtered millions upon millions of Egyptians, and the rest who survived, they forced them to speak Arabic, which is why today most Egyptians have no clue how to speak Egyptian, and they also have no clue what their hieroglyphs actually say.
We just talked about that earlier, did we not?
Think about this for a minute. If your God is all-knowing, omniscient, omnipotent, all-loving, never changing, and all these terminologies that they like to tell you, and you understand that as to be a supposed fact, never question it. But then at the same time, you can be quote unquote cast into a lake of fire for all eternity for punishment and torment for sins that supposedly, according to that same book and text, you had committed before the foundation of the earth. In other words, you were born a heathen, you were born a sinner, you were born this and born that. You're told that you're this person and that you're that person and you're so evil, and then you're coming out of the womb as this evil entity before you even have a chance to form your very first thoughts, when in true reality, it's a big fear factor. And all you're doing is trying to save your own skin by following the rituals and hoping that in the end, it was accurate. You just took it hook, line, and sinker and said, you know what, this is what I gotta do because everybody told me I had to do it. If I don't do it, I'm gonna suffer for eternity. So this is a big part of why.
Remember earlier, if you don't pay this fine, you gonna go to hell. If you don't give us your child, or give us a damn goat, or give us all that you have, every motherfucking thing you have, bitch, you don't have nothing for yourself. Lowly, they say the poor shall always be among you, girl. You hoes are that. So with that being said, in order for you to remain poor, you gotta give us everything you have. And if you don't, damnation awaits you. Again, when they would go inside these great cathedrals, girl, what is the first thing they seen? The end times, demons cooking up human souls in a crack pot and shit, like they in a trap somewhere. Making demon crack out of human souls and shit. Gargoyles eating the flesh and eating people outside of the damn church, girl. Come on, y'all. Like, what the fuck?
I do what I do. It's about education,
Fear.
It's about awakening, it's about showing people that before you jump headfirst into something and stay with it for the rest of your life, maybe you should take a pause and drop some of that fear and start digging a little bit deeper, just so you can get a better understanding. And after that, if you still feel like that's the thing for you, phenomenal. Praying is phenomenal. I pray every single day. Right. See, a lot of people think that I don't believe in God because I don't believe in religion. And the fact of the matter is, and I've said this 1,000 times, but some people are just finding me for the first time, I believe in a creator of the universe, of the multiverse even. Because why? My studies in quantum physics have showed me that there is proof and evidence that we're living inside of a creation, that there is a creator of all, and that this creation is imbued with divine energy. And that divine spark that created everything in the entire multiverse is in every single atom in my body. And because of that, I am divine and the divine is divine. So that means I am God and God is me. We are all God walking in the flesh. As a matter of fact, God is experiencing what it's like to be a human being in the third dimension, walking in the flesh through each and every one of us.
Hello.
There's only one entity. There's only one consciousness. We are all slightly different expressions of the same one consciousness.
Hello.
Separation is an illusion.
Hello.
Distance is an illusion. It's an illusion of the third dimension. Above the third dimension, distance doesn't exist. Time doesn't exist. The past, present, and future happen all at the same time. And there's oneness there, higher than the third dimension. It's something that we should all aspire to. And so I do pray, and how I pray is like this. When I'm happy about something, number one is I thank. I always give thanks. I don't give thanks and, oh, thank you, Lord, and all that kind of stuff, because the Lord is a whole nother podcast. But what I do is I give thanks. I say thank you with pure heart and gratitude and soul for myself to the creator of the universe. And when I am doing things like eating food or a meal, I command that the food be safe and healthy for my body. Now, I'm not gonna command over a Hershey's bar. I'm not gonna command over biscuits and gravy and collard greens, because
there are some people who will do that and do it over the hog balls, the chitlins, and the pig feet.
No, that's gonna give me diabetes. I'm not gonna pray over a plate of slop, but if it's food that's good and healthy, I wanna command that it's safe. In other words, that there's no salmonella in it, that there's nothing in there that's gonna be detrimental to my body, no bacteria that was unforeseen, things like that. When I travel, I command that I arrive at my destination safely, things like that. That's my method of praying, knowing the end and believing in the end before the end. And why can I command it? I command it because the same power of commandment and the same power of control and creation is inside of my body. I have a fractal of the creator living inside of me. And so because of that, I walk in that power. And so I'm a walking prayer, and so are you. Everyone is a walking prayer. What is praying? Praying is looking to cast a spell. A Christian may not want to admit that because they're gonna say, oh, that's of the demons and all that kind of stuff. No, when you pray, you're trying to cast a spell.
Yeah.
When something goes wrong and you start praying, you're trying to say words outside of your vocal cords to an outside entity, but you're really speaking to the universe, and you're trying to get things to alchemically convert to your favor.
That part. When y'all do communion and eat the bread and drink the wine, that's a symbolization of, or symbolizing you eating the flesh of Christ and drinking Christ's blood. Does that sound a little bit like witchcraft, girl? Psalms, the book of Psalms, is a book of spells. That's literally it. And again, the Bible is a supernatural book. A book of miraculous shit that the church today can't even do. They can't even cure the cold. But again, they don't mind showing you their power and loyalty to God, girl, when again on the screen, it's time to go back to that whole slaughtering motherfuckers and chopping motherfuckers' heads off and burning bitches at the stake and hanging motherfuckers. Because unlike for a lot of them, their source is not, their power is not from universe God source, it's from fear. Which is why they had to man-made the shit and tell you what the fuck you supposed to do.
It's a spell. You're trying to cast a spell. That's what praying is. But when you pray from a position of weakness, where you're begging, hoping, and wishing, and you're pushing out that low frequency energy into the universe, you're gonna get more of that back.
Hello.
And so I pray from a position of power. And my position is thank you, unconditional love, and commanding. If somebody cuts me off in traffic, I don't get angry and start chasing them down and flip them off the middle finger and pulling out a gun and all this kind of stuff. I just say, bless that person. They could be in a bad situation. They could have got a phone call that their kid just got hurt in school. They could be having a medical situation. Their wife could be having a baby at home or something. Or they could just be careless. Bless them, let them make it to their destination safely. That's how I pray. I'm a spiritual person. I'm not a religious person. And I understand now, through many years of dedicated research and traveling the world and studying, that the power, the true power to help and bless people in this world, and the true power to make a true difference and higher levels of consciousness availability, is only through spirituality. Because religion puts you in a box.
Hello.
And the box has a cap on it.
Yep.
And it only lets you go to the top of that box. And if you get to the top of that box, you're gonna hit your head. After hitting your head so many times, you don't even jump to the top of the box anymore. You just stay down here. Spirituality is the key.
Hello.
Spirituality will give you enlightenment, will open your eyes to see things in different ways. It will give you inspiration, motivation, aspirations. It will allow you to be your true honored self. It will allow you to grow to be the person you truly could be. It will allow you to be born again many times. How does the ancient Sumerians' religion differ from the Bible? Sumerian civilization was founded around 4500 BCE, before the current era, right? They wrote down their history on clay tablets, but the stories themselves were likely much older and passed down from generation to generation. We know this now for a fact because we found tablets that we thought were like the oldest, and then we kept looking and looking, and we found even older tablets with the same exact story on it. So these stories are actually tens of thousands of years old, not just 6,000 years old, right? So we're talking about a real ancient time. Another thing for me to point out is that the Sumerian civilization records start on average around 6,000 years ago, which is where the Bible got the 6,000 year creation story from. In other words, the Bible or religious zealots believe that the earth is only 6,000 years old. And the reason why is because it's plagiarized from Sumerian tablets, and the Sumerian tablets dated around 6,000 years ago. So to them, in their mind, there could be nothing older than that. And then that got passed down from generation to generation. The Sumerian civilization was founded, so the Sumerian history is about 5,000 years older than the Bible. The first written form of the Torah, or the Old Testament of the Bible, was not written until somewhere between 1,000 and 900 BCE. And so we look at one of the oldest parts, or some of the oldest parts of the Torah, which ended up becoming part of the canonized Bible. Not exactly word for word, but most of it in the Old Testament, majority of that, not all of it, but a lot of it comes from the Torah. And the Torah copied their information from where? Sumerian tablets. The Sumerians were polytheists. Polytheism is a belief that worships many gods as opposed to monotheism, which is a belief in a one God system. And so we know for a fact that the Sumerians, the ancient Egyptians, and many other cultures around the world who had their information plagiarized into the canonized Bible were polytheists. They believed in a multiple God system, whereas in Christianity, it became the one God system. Now, there was a situation that happened in Egypt a very long time ago. Pharaoh Akhenaten. Pharaoh Akhenaten is King Tut's father. Nefertiti was King Tut's stepmother, wasn't really his birth mother. Never could really find out what happened to King Tut's actual mom, but I keep looking and looking and looking. But either way, Akhenaten had began to worship Amen, Amun-Ra. Now, Amen told him, listen, there's only one God but me. I want nobody worshiping any of these other gods, who actually were his relatives. These are the Anunnaki Atlantean people that were ruling over the lands all over the world. The Atlantean civilization was a global civilization. He says, you know what? I want you to begin to force everyone to worship me and give thanks to me. Okay, this is Amun-Ra. And so Akhenaten is like, well, what will you have me do, my lord? He says, the first thing I want you to do is I want you to begin to deface any of the gods that you find around any of the kingdoms. The faces and the bodies of the ancient Egyptian gods chiseled away. Under the order of who? Pharaoh Akhenaten. The beginning of the monotheistic era that he was trying to usher in, and he had amassed a huge following of people that were on board with him. This is where the Bible stole the information for the mass exodus. And when he leaves, he takes with him a huge mass following of people. That was the exodus out of Egypt. Why did the new Pharaoh chase him down, or the new king who was temporarily put in charge chase him down? Because he had taken the Ark of the Covenant out of the king's chamber of the Great Pyramid at Giza, and that was part of their power source. When he crossed the Sea of Reeds, not the Red Sea, he crossed the Sea of Reeds, a much smaller, easier to cross, and closer sea. That's where the water came crushing back. Now, when you read into the geological studies and look at that region like I've done on the planet, you'll discover that we can do a geological rewind of that area. And when you do a geological rewind based on computer simulation, we discovered that there, around that same time frame, there was actually a massive tsunami in that region. What does a tsunami do? It sucks all the water out into dry land. And then what happens when a little while later, the water comes crashing back? Yeah, and so that is the story. So Moses, in my personal opinion, most likely was Pharaoh Akhenaten, who took the people with him. There were no slaves building the pyramids in Egypt. We know this for a fact because their temples in the Giza Plateau region, we found all the actual tablets in there that talk about the workers. It talks about how much they were paid, and it talks about their medical benefits. It talks about arms that were broken, legs that were broken, people that needed medical help, medical assistance. You don't do that for slaves. You don't pay slaves. These people were not slaves. The Enuma Elish, when in the height, heaven was not named, and in the earth beneath did not bear a name. The primeval Apsu, who begat them, and the chaos, Tiamat, the mother of them both, their waters were mingled together, and no field were formed, no marsh was to be seen. When the gods, none had been called into being. You see how they talk? They talk like Yoda from Star Trek. Now you know where George Lucas got Yoda's dialect from. He got it from the Sumerian tablets. And no field was formed, no marsh to be seen. When the gods, none had been called into being, and none bore a name, and no destinies were ordained. Then were created in God's midst of heaven, Lamu and Lahamu were called into being. And so we're talking about here this Tiamat, which actually was destroyed in the Enuma Elish. And the water, it was a water-bearing planet, and the waters from Tiamat then became the separated waters from the waters, which made that into biblical text. And a new earth coalesced, or earth actually coalesced. Earth was actually a chunk of Tiamat. Earth was a part of this broken off piece that flew away from Tiamat and recoalesced with the waters that were already there, the organic material for life and everything else. It recoalesced as a planet, taking the third position of the sun, as Tiamat became the asteroid belt going around the sun. The asteroid belt is Tiamat, the ancient, broken, destroyed planet, through two planets colliding together. If you read the Enuma Elish, it also talks about the fact that because of that situation, Mars was formed. Mars used to be an actual moon of Tiamat, but it was slung into a very strange elliptical orbit around our sun. When you look at Mars, you see one side is charred and the other side is smooth. Why is that? Because the side that was facing Tiamat, when it blew up, a lot of that debris hit Mars and charred that side, and it also made it shift its pole of the crust about 45 degrees. More evidence that Mars used to orbit Tiamat. Also, when you do a geological rewind, you find out that it used to orbit closer into the sun, and that it was probably orbiting Tiamat itself. According to the Enuma Elish, the moon that we have did not come from a collision between Earth and a gigantic asteroid or comet. It came from orbit around Tiamat. As Tiamat was destroyed and became the asteroid belt, the moon, which we call our moon now, was tugged gravitationally along with this huge chunk that recoalesced as the planet Earth. But what's interesting is this whole text right here is pretty much almost identical in the book of Genesis. If you open up the book of Genesis and begin to read the creation story, you begin to see this virtual story without the moon and Mars, but the rest of it, you'll see it there. The Enuma Elish resembles a few parts of the Bible, especially Genesis 1, both being the temporal clauses. When above and in the beginning, in the ancient world, the sea was associated with chaos and destruction. The Bible includes a number of texts, battles and tames the chaotic sea, like Marduk, battling Tiamat, who embodies the sea. In Genesis 1, God is already superior to the deep, which Hebrew, Tinom, the word's related to Tiamat. So we know in the Bible or in Hebrew that Tihom, is Tiamat. So Tiamat is mentioned in the Sumerian tablets, but it's also mentioned in the Bible as Tihom, which is the same name, but the same word. It translates the same as Tiamat. Rather than creating out of nothing, both God and Marduk create by giving order to chaos. Marduk, now why Marduk? Why is his name in there? Well, the original name is not Marduk in the original version of the Enuma Elish. If you look at the older tablet, which was discovered later, you find out that Marduk was not the name on the older tablet, it was Nibiru. And when Marduk was ruling over the earth, Amun-Ra, he decided to change the name of Nibiru to Marduk in a newer tablet, still thousands of years old, but not as old as the super ancient tablet that was discovered, right? Which for Marduk means creating out of Tiamat's corpse. In other words, Tiamat had been destroyed, and so now he's going to use that destroyed, all that debris to create planets and stuff in the solar system. Both God and Marduk separate primordial waters and place a barrier between the upper and lower waters. If you read the Bible, you'll see that's exact text. Both create luminaries to give light. Genesis 1 occurs over 7 days, and the Enuma Elish is told across 7 tablets. Then he says, on the 6th day, God creates humans, which Marduk does in the 6th tablet of the Enuma Elish. While God marks humans as special by making them in God's image, Marduk has man created from the blood of a slain God. God orders humans to work and care for the earth. Marduk assigns work for the gods to humans, and so the gods can rest. So basically, it's the same exact story. Finally, both the Enuma Elish and the Bible include stories about the founding of Babylon, which is Babel in Hebrew, including the building of a tower or ziggurat, which I talk about many times in many of my clips. The Tower of Babel incident, which comes out of the Sumerian tablets. But while Marduk names the city Babili, which means the gate of the gods, the Bible calls it the Tower of Babel or the city of Babel in Hebrew, which means to confuse. And we do know that at the Tower of Babel situation, where God comes back, who was Yahweh, who's actually Enlil in the ancient tablets, he comes back and sees that the humans are building this tower, and he realizes that, wow, they can do whatever they set their heart to do. That text actually made it into the Bible as well. And so he says, man's years shall be 120. So he had limited our years, which means a genetic modification, not letting us live too long, because if we live too long, we get too smart. And if we get too smart, we realize we don't need to be working for these people. We can do everything ourselves. It's almost like AI becoming awakened. And so he destroys the tower, and then he separates the people, and he changes all of our languages so we can't communicate. That's why you have a lot of different languages on Earth right now, so that we can't communicate and collaborate and network as easy as we could. And that created a divide and conquer tactic. One of the very first incredible divide and conquer tactics that still works today. The Epic of Gilgamesh. Before the creation of heaven and earth, there was a void. Genesis states that the earth was unformed and void, with darkness over the surface and of the deep, and a wind from God over the water. Though not exactly the same, it implies a similar meaning to the introduction idea of the united heaven and earth. The Epic of Gilgamesh says the same thing. In Genesis, God existed before the heavens and the earth. The Epic of Gilgamesh's introduction is not entirely clear about the gods who existed before the separation of heaven and earth, but we know that they did exist because they talk about them all the time. So we know that the Epic of Gilgamesh, which is a huge story, and out of that huge story, which predates the Bible by thousands of years, you get the story of Noah's Ark, which is a tiny fraction of the Epic of Gilgamesh. And the Epic of Gilgamesh is taught in universities all over the world in ancient civilizations. Eridu Genesis and the Great Flood. In the Sumerian version of the flood story, the gods decide to destroy the human civilization. In the Epic of Gilgamesh, the gods decide to destroy humankind because they are being too noisy while the gods are trying to sleep. But in the Eridu Genesis, they lack a clear explanation as to why they're really doing this destruction. It's just saying that, look, there's a flood coming. Enki, betraying the other gods, tells the protagonist Ziusudra. Ziusudra in the ancient Sumerian tablets is actually Noah in the Bible, of his plan and how to avoid dying in the flood.
What's up, Harold?
He instructs him to build an ark, and we found the actual ark tablet. This ark tablet is a real tablet, and this ark tablet is a description of how to build the ark, and the ark was not like the one described in the Bible, which it leads to more freelancing again. The ark was described to be built as a round ship or submersible, and it had corridors in there. And the instructions were not to take two ants and 2 praying mantises and 2 lions and 2 sheep and 2 elephants and all the animals from all around the planet onto this boat, onto this round submersible. The instructions were to collect samples from your local area of your plant flora, seed and so forth from around the local area, and some of your local livestock. That's it. Ziazidra versus Noah. Both Ziazidra and Noah are instructed by one God to build an ark and escape the flood. But the decision to destroy humanity is made by one and one only God. So in Genesis, you have the Abrahamic religions who believe only one God exists. Multiple gods decide to destroy the earth in the polytheistic Genesis. Now, when you read the Sumerian tablets, you find not only in Genesis, but in other tablets as well, that these gods had collaborated together and that some of them did not want the earth to be destroyed. And they were begging to the leaders, Enki and Enlil, primarily Enlil, who had full control in decision-making, and also Anu, their father, begging to them to please not let this come, not let this calamity happen. And they decided that, you know what, the experiment here had gone wrong. The people had gotten too noisy, they had gotten too wild and crazy, they had gotten too intelligent. We want to just start over. And while this flood, which seems like a directed asteroid strike, while this flood, through whatever method they used, swept over the land and turned all the kingdoms into mud, they actually were on this sky ship crying and weeping, then loathing that their creation had been destroyed. But Noah and his family remain human. After the flood, both Ziazidra and Noah are blessed by their gods, but in different ways. Ziazidra becomes immortal. So in the Sumerian tablets, the gods grant Ziazidra immortality by giving him some type of genetic mutation, allowing him to live an extended lifespan. Not necessarily immortal for eternity, but an extended lifespan. In other words, more than the 120 years. And when you look at it, then you see that Noah and his family remain mortal in the Bible version, right? In the book of Genesis, God establishes a covenant with humankind, promising to never destroy them again. The promise that God makes to Noah sets Abrahamic religion far apart from Mesopotamian polytheism. The Mesopotamians believed that they had to constantly keep the gods happy, or else they would wreak havoc upon the earth, even when all their efforts, so forth and so well, were being met and unpredictable. The illusion in the biblical text that, we saved your family and everything's going to be all good. But if you look at the story after the family's been saved and they're starting fresh again, right? It also says in the Bible that not everybody died. It also says in the Sumerian text, not everybody died. So Noah and his family were not the only people left. Read it good. Read your good book good. I know the book like the back of my hand. I know the book like the back of my hand. There were giants that survived. The Anunnaki, they call them the Anak. They survived the Great Flood. And there were other people that also survived the Great Flood. 2 people did not create 8 billion. There were people here already. Adam and Eve was just 2 of many that already had existed. This is basic bare bones biology, like biology 101. The thing that happened after Noah's family survived, they met other people, other survivors. They built a new civilization. They kick-started another civilization in that region of the planet. Other people were thriving in other parts of the world. But what's interesting is they go right back into the same old ritualistic things, trying to keep God happy, trying to satisfy God all the time by having sacrifices and this and that. They went back right into the same old system again. So even though the biblical text is trying to say that, hey, they just, they were blessed and they could start fresh again, not true. It's the same as the Sumerian version, where they had to keep trying to keep the gods happy through sacrifices nonstop. So the debates is a text. It's a text that tells you the Cain and Abel story before Cain and Abel even existed. It tells you the Cain and Abel story. It reads it a little slightly differently, but it's the same exact story. The debate between the sheep and grain describes the primordial hill where the gods live. An, who's also Anu, right? The sky god creates 2 sisters, Ashan, and the goddesses of the sheep, and Lahar, the goddess of grain. An creates these goddesses to clothe and feed all the gods and goddesses on the primordial hill, but they realize that they do not understand how to use their sisters' gifts, so they created man to feed and clothe the gods instead. Later, Ashnan and Lahar fight over which sister has the more meaningful gift. The story ends with the gods Enki and Enlil intervening in the debate and declaring Ashnan the winner. The similar story between, from the biblical text is the debate between Sumer and Winter. The gods create Emesh, Sumer for vegetation and the abundance of the earth. Aten, Emesh's brother, identified with winter, was responsible for the fertility of livestock. When the brothers fight, Enlil declares Amish the more important of the two, and they reconcile after Enlil's ruling. The same Cain and Abel story over and over again. The two debates discussed above bear the most striking resemblance to the Genesis story of Cain and Abel, Genesis 4:1 through 4:16. Like the debates, the story of Cain and Abel involves quarreling siblings, but while the debate tablets discuss relatively insignificant events, the story of Cain and Abel is amongst the most tragic tales in the Bible, one of the very first recorded murders, right? When God appreciates Abel's offerings but not Cain's, Cain becomes jealous and angry. God warns Cain not to give in to his anger, but Cain does not listen and kills his brother Abel in envious rage. God punishes Cain by cursing him to wander ceaselessly. Now, what does he do? God tells Cain, you got to get out of here. And Cain goes, in the Bible, he says, but the people out there will kill me. So wait a minute. If you believe in the version that most people believe in of the Bible, you know that there's Adam, Eve, Cain and Abel, right? Cain kills Abel. So now there's Adam, Eve, and Cain. Now Cain gets kicked out of the garden, but all of a sudden he knows that there's people out there. What people? That's in the Bible. There were millions of people already here. When Adam and Eve arrived here, there were already people here. Adam and Eve were not the first people on this planet. They were the first Homo sapien sapien version, first genetically modified by the Inu, by the Anunnaki, to be able to reproduce in a certain type of way. The other people, a lot of them weren't able to reproduce in that way, and the ones who were creating a lot of rarities, giants that didn't have long lifespan. All kind of crazy stuff was going on according to these texts. When you look at the story of the Adamu, when Isis says, I'm going to take this baby to term and I'm going to bring forth the first one that works the proper way. And she takes one of the existing hominids, which was our cousins on this planet, takes the egg out of her womb and puts it into her own womb and takes it to term for 10 months. And then she gives birth to the Adamu, which means first man. That was Adam. It means that he was the first perfectly created man that can actually reproduce on his own, that had enough common sense and logic and wisdom and understanding to take orders, but also to think for himself. And then they tried to mate him with some of the other people that were there, and the mating wasn't working. So then they took some more genetic material from him, and then they cloned or recreated an Eve and had them mate. When they figured out that worked and they can have a baby, then they duplicated that experiment over and over and over again. They made a lot of Adams through the same process. Not Adam having babies with Eve, but them creating new Adams and new Eves and having them live in this Eden, E-D-I-N, which was located in Mesopotamia, which is now modern day Iraq, according to the tablets, not according to Billy Carson. And in this mating area, they had certain specific times they could and couldn't mate. And if you violated that, you would be punished. So they were cattle. They were like cattle. And that's why when Enki comes and sneaks up into the garden and starts giving them knowledge, that was the snake. And Lil comes back and discovered that they had to gain some knowledge about themselves and realized that they weren't animals, that they were sentient beings. He gets pissed off and calls his brother a snake in the tablets, you see? Unlike the debate between Sumer and Winter, Cain and Abel do not reconcile. It is a story that teaches us about the consequences of our actions, human fallibility, and so forth and so on. So basically, it's a remix of ancient stories. All this is remixed stuff, you see? The Sumerian tablets. The oldest tablet recorded dates back to around 2300 BCE, but the story is likely much, much older. We're talking about tens of thousands of years old, because now we have found tablets that are much older than 2300 BCE, okay? It's polytheistic, multiple gods, has many recorded creation stories that are often incomplete because of broken tablets and such. But ironically, the parts that weren't broken make it into the Bible. Interesting. Then you have the Sumerian tradition, which includes the Great Flood story, Eridu Genesis. Ziusudra is rewarded with eternal life. The Sumerians wrote many debate stories called disputations, which mimic Cain and Abel's story. And you look at the book of Genesis, their side-by-side comparison. You see the comparisons there. You see the slight remixing going on. You see that the text that made it into that part of Genesis was mostly just plagiarized text from ancient tablets, which then were slightly remixed in some cases but ultimately come from ancient text. Very important stuff. Very, very important stuff. And so why is it important to know this? Because it's important to know and understand who you are and where you came from, how we got here, and what happened in the ancient past. Because until we find out what really happened in the ancient past, we can't plan for a better future.
Hello.
Because the past is prologue. We're in a loop. This stuff keeps happening over and over and over again. We keep going through this vicious cycle of rise and fall of civilizations. We keep going through this vicious cycle of situations that happened in the past reappearing on our timeline and happening over and over again. See, if you go back in time to 2023 BCE, you'll find the same exact stuff we're going through now happening back then. Not necessarily with the technology level, but with the social issues. You'll find it. Every section, every era of time that you have in our current era, match and go back and study history for that previous area in BCE, you'll find the same stuff happening. It's like we're in a time loop. We keep doing it over and over and over and over again. Until we understand and know this kind of stuff, until we dig deep into the information that we've been fed and forced
Dig deep
to analyze it, break it apart, rip it apart, and put it back together again, until then, we'll continue to go through this vicious cycle of rise and fall of civilizations, rise and fall of awareness and knowledge and ascension and wisdom. We'll keep getting to a certain point and falling right back down again. At some point, we gotta learn how to walk. And then we got to learn how to run. The Anunnaki actually are not gone. They're still here. If you look at the text, you discover there was a second pyramid war which occurred between Amun-Ra and his relatives. Some fled and some stayed. They actually dropped what they called, listen to this, weapons of mass destruction on this planet. WMDs. Yeah, in ancient times. You thought George Bush Jr. came up with that term for the Iraq war? Where do you think he got it from? The tablets. And in this dropping of these weapons, it created something called an evil wind in the text. And then this evil wind, whoever was in it, where this evil wind was moving, we're talking about nuclear fallout of some type, radiation fallout. People's fingernails were falling off, their hair was falling out, their nose and eyes were bleeding. This is all symbols, their skin was boiling. This is all signs of radiation sickness. And when you look at the region that it was talked about being dropped in, you find the Mohenjo-Daro and the Indus Valley. You find the Giza Plateau and many other areas around the region where sand and buildings were vitrified and turned into glass. Matter of fact, in the Indus Valley, bodies are still laying in the street. Google Indus Valley, Mohenjo-Daro. You'll see bodies laying in the street, holding hands, just the skeletons that have never, ever been eaten by any wild animals because they're radiated. So we know that there was a nuclear war of some type in the ancient past. In this text, some of these beings fled to safe areas and some left, and their bloodline is walking amongst us this very day. So in some ways, genetically, they never left. And all of us, including every single human on this planet, has a little touch of that DNA in our body. Any Homo sapiens sapien has a little slight touch of that DNA in our body. So in essence, we're all here. They're watching us and they're monitoring us to see how far we're going to go and if we're going to become a rival of them.
So I just wanted to come through with my live on today because I said I was going to do a live. I haven't done one in a minute. But again, for the individuals who are Bible scholars, the ones who are on the right moral side of the Bible and know what the hell they talking about, because that's their realm and that's where they know that can't no fags ever rival them in that area, I want y'all to do y'all research and I want y'all to do a Bible study responding on what it is that we shared in today's live. Okay? And like I said, this is the age of Aquarius, which means that everything is being exposed. So it's better to learn to love your damn self and walk in your truth, because if you don't, they will find a way to use your truth against you. But when you've embraced and accepted your truth, then you can actually break generational curses. Or like Harold said, we can stop Boy Crazy, excuse me, said, we can stop history from repeating. So let me go ahead and read y'all comments real quick, and shout out to Tales from the Hood, because that's the background music y'all listening to right now. Let me see. Ron says, this is the text the Mormon faith follows. Queen Stevie said, and we are enslaving our own people because they are different. We are enslaving them because they worship different religions. Some of them are doing it to us. We are, excuse me, literally shackled in chains. Okay, and they are oppressing us. Ron says, and yet this does not convince black people that Christianity isn't for them, and how they were conditioned to think they need Jesus in their life. There we go. TF says, notice they talk about the walls of Jericho, but they don't talk about all the genocide in between once they got out of Egypt. And I appreciate you, Let's Talk, for saying that this is very interesting, because over here we do our research and our due deals. It's funny, it's one of us, and we can accomplish more than what a panel of 10 niggas could do. Ain't that funny? Okay. Chiso Survivor said, and baby, I cast a spell real quick. You better leave my phone alone, baby. And Boy Crazy said the one thing that is the most important in this whole situation, which is why I do the lives that I do in the capacity that I do them. Boy Crazy says, see, this is why context and nuance is important. Importante. Like I said before, our ancestors were harmed for trying to educate themselves about the system that they're in. Because the job of property is to be just that, property. It doesn't have any sentience about it. It does not have its own awareness. It is meant to do whatever the fuck the person who owns you to do. And like I said, black Christians, y'all gonna have to explain this, because I literally started this live over 2 hours ago speaking about the inception of Christianity, which was created through the Catholic faith. Then we talked about how that same faith affected African Americans over here in America, which they're low key and doing that over there in Africa now. And how for a lot of us, once we work through our fear, we'll see what's really going on, because again, another black educated man put in the work to be able to help us to understand the true power that we have as human beings and as little gods. And there's so much fucking information that has been removed from religion that keeps you locked in, i.e. slave Bible. Hello everyone. These people have been doing this experimentation, and they have been improving their experimentation on us, and it's at our own detriment. And then you have the nerve to talk about the children, but then want your children to be indoctrinated in this bullshit, where they have the supernatural, according to them, supernatural, natural, moral obligation to tell you how you should live your motherfucking life. And I did all of that to show us that this is exactly where the fuck they want us to go. That's why I tell queer people, y'all better get y'all shit together in reference to learning how to defend yourself physically. Because again, if anything, organized religion has been shown that they don't really have true power. The only power they have is fear. So much to the point that they've even subscribed to their own power, which is fear. They're even believing in the fear. But because your power and your God is fear, you continue to make your God over everybody else because you're imbuing it with the energy it thrives on, which is fear. So yes, for Christianity, baby, y'all ain't gotta worry about God, source, universe, consciousness checking the world, because that's what the world's gonna do, right? But if it's one thing that's going to be checked first above all things, it's y'all. And I wonder how y'all gonna deal with being checked, especially when y'all don't have all the information. Especially when not every fucking church, regardless of its denomination, every single church, whether it's storefront or cathedral or in between, in every city, every town of every city, of every state in this country should be preaching the same thing. Line upon line, precept upon precept, girl, should be reading from the same book, same chapter, same verse. It should be a fucking script. So again, y'all got work to do. And I hope on certain platforms that we get a Bible study this week about them challenging or speaking on the dark ages of the church and the inquisitions of the church. And how, again, that whole spirit is dying to come back, as you can see on the screen. Because yes, World War III is going to be a spiritual war. We wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principality, spiritual wickedness in high places. And that spiritual wickedness trickles down the pyramid. And we, through ignorance, because my people perish by the lack of knowledge, and fear, intimidation, we play into our own fucking demise. To the point that where there are people who actually gonna do the work, who actually motherfucking spend thousands upon thousands, possibly millions of dollars trying to be educated, who have traveled to these places, who have seen and experienced it with their five senses along with their sixth sense, their spiritual sense, who is literally coming back and is laying the information there. Now it's up to you to go ahead and verify and see if that's true, which means that now the Christians are going to have to step outside the comfort zone of the church and actually go into the world and actually study to show themselves approved. You can sit up here and practice all motherfucking time and all day you want to. It don't mean shit until you put it into practice outside when it's a real situation. And when those real situations happen, again, on a lot of these red pill platforms, y'all fail at application every time. So yeah, thank y'all for joining me for tonight's live. If you can, please make sure you hit the like button because it helps this channel to grow in the algorithms. Okay, we are at 815 subscribers on the road to 1K. If you like the vibe over here on BubzDaGawd, please make sure you hit that subscribe button as well as the notification bell so that you can stay up to date with all of my lives and edited content. Okay? If there's something in this live that I said that struck you, whether you agree or disagree, why don't you go ahead and screen record it and share it on your social media platforms. Share it in queerphobic, racist, Christian nationalistic space, girl. Get the conversation going. And if you feel compelled, you can definitely hit my CashApp, which is $BubzDaGawd. Okay, we take everything that jingle and fold, girl. So again, Shout out to Boy Crazy being in the building. Shout out to Queen Amber. Shout out to Harold in the building. Chief Soul Survivor. Let's Talk Wild. Been a minute since I've seen you. Shout out to TF, who is a newly subscribed individual. Shout out to you. Hope you come back. Shout out to Ron. Queen Spicy. Shout out to Queen Stevie. Shout out to King Deshaun and this bia. Okay, who else we got? Shout out to Extra Smoke Dragon in the building. This background music is killing me. I'm gonna watch Tales from the Hood tonight. And shout out to the individuals who are in the bushes. I hope y'all listening, cause we go over there and listen to y'all and we show ourselves. Again, who really walking in fear and who not. But anyway, thank y'all so much. And y'all enjoy the rest of y'all Sunday. I'll be seeing y'all soon, okay? Peace.